And so we officially have started. Welcome to our April 8th OEIB meeting. We've got a lot of really exciting events coming up on the agenda today that Nancy and Hilda have put together. As you can see, the governor's not here. Mary Spildy is not here, so you've got the alternate to the alternate chair in myself. So let's go ahead and start. Seth, can you do the roll call?
Governor Kitzhaber, Julia Brim Edwards, Yvonne Curtis,
Present.
Matthew Donegan, Samuel Henry,
Here.
Nicole June Maher,
Here.
Mark Mobihill,
Here.
David Reeves,
Here.
Ron Saxton, Mary Spildy, Kay Turan, Hannah Bendering,
Here.
Dick Wicknell.
Here. This isn't on the agenda, but it's a very important item. I've just received notice that, Dick, it's your birthday.
Oh my God.
Oh. So let's give Dick a big hand for his 40th.
Deja vu all over again, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, right.
I'm doing something right because he gave me a present with a Dodge Ram shirt, so I'll take it. Okay, item number 2. Let's go ahead. We have the minutes from the February board meeting that we need to approve. So do I hear a motion?
So move.
Second?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Moving to item number 3, Chief Education Officer update, tab 2. Turn that over to Dr. Golden.
Thank you very much. You have my monthly sort of activities I went to attached to the strategic plan that I always give you, but I did want to spend time talking about the accountability framework letters. So you all know that letters went to the Early Learning Council to JADA, and working with the Early Learning Council, and then it also went to Rob Saxton, working with the Board of Education, and to Ben Cannon, working with the HEC. And basically, when we first thought about the notion, part of the concept behind the OEIB was that we were going to establish model schools, we were going to establish schools that were on track, and when schools weren't achieving as an established level, we were going to provide support. And this really is a model about support. But in the end, the question becomes, what about 3 years, 4 years? You've provided all the support, and a school or institution still is not achieving as well as the standard or their peers. And what I say about this is, if you have 2 schools that look alike in terms of demographics, or universities or community college, and one is achieving at the 80% level and another is achieving at the 5% level, I think if you would ask yourself, which school would you want your child in? I think we would all agree the one that's achieving at the 80% level. And if it's good enough for our children, it's good enough for every child. So every child deserves to be in a well-performing organization. And so we're looking forward to hearing about how do we move from a model of providing support to then what's next if the support doesn't seem to be working. So that's what those letters are about, and we'll have information about that in the beginning of the summer and share it with all of you. By the way, I'll tell you, all the agency heads are totally supportive of this. They really think it's important, and I appreciate that. The last thing I did want to share is a letter that we put together and the governor signed as chair of the Oregon Education Investment Board to Dr. Ray of OSU, just letting him know how sad we were to hear about the death of his wife, who truly, Beth is an extraordinary woman, from if you read any of the information that came out. So this is Mark's idea that it would be a good thing to do, and we just want him to know we're all thinking about him, and we want to celebrate her many contributions. So that's it.
Thank you, Nancy. Any questions, comments for Nancy on her report? Hannah?
So I understand the letters that went out to the department heads, and I guess, help me understand a little bit of the thinking about what that will look like, or is this just, do you have any feedback from them already about what kind of?
No, they just got the letters probably a week ago, so I don't know if they convened or not, so, you know, I'm,
Will be, the Higher Education Coordinating Commission will be, received the letter, I think today, in an email from us, and we'll be discussing it at our meeting later this week for the first time. I think we have a couple of months to provide some response to the board. I think it's certainly an important and worthwhile topic for our commission to be thinking about.
in doubt about.
We have a meeting, ours is a phone call in April, so we'll address it in May and have the report back by September. So we're looking forward to being able to address this.
Okay, and my only request is, you know, we talked about tight loose for quite some time, and then it got from tight loose tight. And I think the second tight is not appropriate if we have not really given the support for people to do the work and make sure they have. And I know we're getting the TEL survey is finished today, so we'll get an indication of K-12, but we don't have anything for early childhood or higher ed. But to really understand what the conditions are, and then are we really doing our work? As we did the report back from the compacts, I don't think we've held up our end of the bargain on supporting districts to be able to use them appropriately. And I just want to make sure that we don't use this stick without having done what we need to do as our part of the mission.
Yeah, good
That's all I
point,
have.
and so, you know, I think this is built on the model of the appropriate support, and that's, I think, where a lot of the focus will be, and then we'll just have to think about after if the appropriate, right level of support doesn't seem to be paying off, just what's next.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, good point.
And you know, Nancy, along those lines of support and Hannah with the achievement compacts, I just want to compliment the staff, Nancy, you and your staff, Peter, Whitney, for the manual that came out for the achievement compacts. That was very well received by the superintendents and the advisory committees. That they've been looking for that for quite a while, and that was very well received, so I want to compliment everyone for that. Any other comments for Nancy for this section? Dick?
Yes, just to comment that this is directed to the directors, but then it should be a challenge for we commissioner members. And then to piggyback on what Hannah's saying too, I would assume that the Outcomes and Investment Subcommittee would be seeing some of the shortcomings where we need to shore up and see what the outcomes are. Sometimes I get the tendency that we say, well, the directors are going to take care of the water on this thing. And this needs, all hands need to be on deck.
Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and move to item number 4. As you can see, there are a few bullets here, Hilda, so you've got some heavy lifting. This is going to be for the next 90 minutes on the Network for Quality Teaching and Learning. We have a lot of wonderful presentations coming. Everybody's prepped for about 10 minutes, right, Hilda?
That's absolutely correct.
Okay.
So for the record, my name is Hilda Rosselli, and I am Director of College and Career Readiness at the Oregon Education Investment Board, and I am joined by my colleague.
For the record, I'm Jonna Timms, and I'm the Administrator for the Network for Quality Teaching and Learning at the Oregon Department of Education.
And so given the charge that Nancy Golden has asked all of us to do, and that is to really make sure that we engage you all in conversations about the topics that we discuss, Seth is passing out 2 probing questions for you to think about as we bring together some examples of what we are seeing in the network to date. And I want to just share first of all that our purpose today is to revisit the conceptualization that led to the development of a network and the funding through the House Bill 3233. And then we really have brought together some examples of how we're seeing changes in the culture, changes in how we support our professional staff, and then also we're going to give you a peek at the portal and get a chance to really look at where we're going next with continued steps. So we very much appreciate and thank you for this opportunity. And there are your focus questions. We even gave you space to jot down thoughts as they come forward. We also wanted to remind you of what the House Bill 3233 stated was the intent of this network, and recognize that what was happening at the same time was a recognition that we had a heavy lift for educators in our state. Think about this. We had Common Core state standards implementation. We have a new educator evaluation system that's going into play. We were really focusing in on how we are closing the achievement gaps for many of our students. And we were also really thinking about these outcomes of kindergarten readiness and third grade reading, etc. At the same time, we had to really look at how sometimes professional development, which is intended to improve this performance of all of us working together, was sometimes happening. We all know that there's still some workshops out there that people drive to, and then they go back and they said it was a great workshop. But then the next day they re-enter and there's no real support that's ongoing. And so we were trying to really address some of these issues with a theory of action that talks about the importance of, first of all, investing in our professionals, in our educators, and then finding that means by which we're sharing best practices and creating collaborative opportunities for them to grow together, with the idea that this is one of the key factors that helps move our improvement of student outcomes. I want to focus on two of the main purposes here, number 1 and number 3, because in anticipation of House Bill 3233, I recall having many conversations about the fact that we needed to find ways to elevate and promote the leadership of teachers, that we needed to bring this to the professional level in which we look at every stage of their career and invest in that. And so we've used this chevron, you've seen it before, but we've used this chevron to just remind ourselves that we have invested in every stage of an educator's career. And just in case you were wondering about the initiatives that fall under the network, we've outlined these here. There's one more that I had put in and it didn't make it into this slide set, around personalized student-centered learning. But these are just some of the big buckets, and we're not going to give you details on all of these today. But ODE has provided a wonderful update for the Ways and Means Committee in February, and we will be providing more information on that as we move forward. However, what we are trying to do is to look at ways that we are creating more embedded time within the day, within the work world for educators, because we know that that's how improvement of any kind of practice moves forward. And the second thing is that there's a heavy emphasis on who they engage with. So you'll hear today about mentors, you'll hear about collaborative grants where people are working together, and you'll really see how this opportunity improves practice. Lastly, I wanted to share that we have an advisory group that we have begun to pull together because we know that it's very important that we sustain this effort and move forward. And so we've given them some pretty heavy lifts in terms of what they are going to be helping us do. And we have not forgotten the third bullet on this slide, and that is that we need to make sure we connect our preparation programs to this effort as well. And some of you have heard me talk about that in the past. I'd like to now turn it over to my colleague, Jonna, who will talk a little bit about the portal.
Absolutely, thank you so much. We're really excited about the opportunity that the portal presents. And it really gives us an opportunity to get it right from the beginning. So we've taken some steps to put things into place that we would like to support educators in getting many different resources, connecting, as well as getting them on-demand access to resources as quickly as possible. So the goals of the portal are just that. The effective and emerging practices, connection, and having resources at their fingertips. Some of the key initiatives that will be highlighted on the portal will start with mentoring standards. Our mentoring project is underway and provides for districts as well as partners with the New Teacher Center to pull together what are the best standards that they're finding in their practice that will allow for us to have many districts, all districts across the state, be able to access good mentoring standards. So that'll be available on the portal, as well as having a chance to interact with districts that are going on this journey to support pulling together formative assessments and to really get teachers involved in building their own assessments and supporting student success through those assessments in their classrooms. Making sure that we knew exactly what the field wanted in the portal was really an important step for us. So we took some time to talk to educators during meetings through November and December. We asked educators, what do you need? What would make this portal useful to you? And some of the things that came to the forefront very quickly was the ability to link to other resources, both nationally and statewide, to be able to rate those resources and have the ability to say, this was really good, this was really useful, this not so much, and share that with our colleagues, as well as the ability to connect educators from district to district, as well as classroom to classroom. And finally, the portal gives us a real opportunity to allow for teachers to tackle problems of practice. So we're really trying to support collaboration, talking about looking at best practices that we are seeing within all of the strategic initiatives, pulling those together and having teachers really grapple with what are the things that will make them better at supporting student success in their individual classrooms across their district. And then for those teachers who may be the only person at their grade level in their district or in their school, having other colleagues to talk with and share with to bring down some of that isolation. So we are really looking forward to moving forward with the next steps in getting the portal introduced and providing a pathway for teachers to access as well as to share their information and to collaborate. Thank you.
So Jonna will be back when she's introducing the mentor team, but we'd like to now bring up our first group. But just a reminder that you have your portal questions that you'll want to keep in mind as you listen to the examples. But if we could invite Sue Hilda to come forward, who is going to talk a little bit about two of the major aspects of the network.
Good afternoon. My name is Sue Hildick. I'm the president of the Chalkboard Project, and I love to come here and hear you talking about supports for educators, and that's what your 90 minutes is focused on today. And we really appreciate that because we believe it's through a statewide system of supports like the network envisions that we're really going to achieve 40-40-20. I would say that we applauded the governor when he made this his largest strategic investment last session, and we think we're starting to see the pieces connect and come to fruition. But it's important to note we're really young in this work as a state. At least we believe that, and we're sort of figuring out how to scale and how to bring these kinds of deeper supports across the state. The network has the potential, we think, to link together really from when a person starts to think about becoming a teacher and enters the preparation process all the way through their career. So longer and richer clinical experiences in a teacher's preparation process, high quality mentoring for first and second year teachers, ongoing customized professional development, performance evaluation that's done well with well-trained observers and evaluators, collaborative culture building. And then what's next, we believe, is around school leadership training and support, and really making sure that our school administrators have the tools that they need to do their jobs well. So we all know that the classroom teacher is the most central in-school factor affecting student achievement, and today you're going to hear from partners who are on the ground really trying to influence that work. The first group, which is Teach Oregon, builds on the work that we've done in class and really deepens the commitment to elevating the teaching profession. by having educators co-create new preparation programs. So educators in the K-12 system and the higher ed system are meeting together and trying to reimagine what preparation looks like. There are 5 projects currently underway, and you have a map, I believe, that shows them on one side. 3 of these are funded by Chalkboard and 2 are funded by the state. And so we're really happy to be in partnership with the state on, again, sort of trying to reimagine how we're going to prepare teachers, and really with an emphasis on the clinical experience being much longer and much more robust, and you'll hear about that. Together, these projects are preparing 65% of Oregon's new teacher candidates, so this is a tremendous leverage point, we think, in the system. Then you'll hear from a panel who represent the CLASS project and the School District Collaboration Fund grants. And as you know, these districts are really trying to create collaborative cultures, and that's what the CLASS process has allowed for. And the other side of the map that you have shows where the CLASS districts are. Some of these are Chalkboard funded, some of them state, some of them federal. And you'll see, this is my tribute to you, Mark, you'll see these dots over in the eastern part of the state. That's what we're calling an R&D effort. We're spending some time in rural and remote Oregon trying to figure out what class looks like in that neck of the woods, and it's very different. And so this to us is not yet a project, it's a listening tour with more to come. Again, we think the essence of the change that Oregon's seeking in 40-40-20 is really going to happen with our professionals, and it's been a long time coming for this state to have a system of supports that spans an educator's career. That's starting to emerge in the network. We're very excited about that and urge your continued support of that. I'm going to introduce the panelists. I also want to introduce Mary Caddis, who is the director of Teach Oregon. She's in the back of the room and she can answer any questions you might have. But we have Dr. Kevin Carr here today, who's a professor at Pacific University. We have Debbie Klump, who's a math teacher at Tillamook High School. And we have Kathy Campobasso, who is our Teach Oregon coach for this particular collaborative. And then followed by the class panel, where we have Matt Yoshikawa, who is the principal of Sunridge Middle School in Pendleton, and Althena Nelson, who's a 3rd grade teacher at Washington Elementary in Pendleton. Thank you.
Well, Kevin's coming up. Seth, we have the phone disengaged, so this will be the time to call. I'll Seth.
Oh my gosh.
So we have Kevin, Debbie, and Kathy.
Right order.
Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Should I wait till the phone?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, please. Thank you.
Sorry, the number you have reached is not in service.
You might be here for a while. All right. Enough behind the wheel, maybe, huh? It is. It takes
Welcome to AT&T's teleconference. There are 1 participants on the call, including you. You are joining your conference as the host. For a menu of available commands, press *#.
Do we have anybody on the line? Okay, they'll be phoning in. Thank you. Kevin, you're up.
Great, thanks for the opportunity to share. I'm Dr. Kevin Carr from Pacific University. Is everyone aware of Pacific University?
Go Boxers.
We're the one. I know Dr. Curtis probably is. It's right next door, and at least on our main campus in Forest Grove. There are many Pacifics. It can be confusing. I get asked on occasion where I work in Woodburn if we're accredited and are these classes going to count and things like that, because they're really that unaware of it. Of course, we've been there since 1849. Starting as a school for orphans of the Oregon Trail, started by a lady in her 60s that was pretty tough to make it on the Oregon Trail. So
Kevin,
we've been here for a little while, yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but if you could just move a little bit away from the mic,
Oh,
it just helps
sure.
pick it up, and it's.
Sorry, I wasn't sure.
No,
Great,
you're good.
thank you.
You're good, thank you.
Thanks for saying that. Okay, so we have our main campus is in Forest Grove. We have a campus in Hillsborough for our health professions, where our health professions are based other than optometry. We have a small College of Education campus in Eugene, and then we have a super small new campus in Woodburn. Were you aware of the campus in Woodburn? that we have. That's news to a lot of people. We've been there for 2 years. And the stories I'm going to share with you this afternoon are focused on our Woodburn campus. That is our site of partnership with Chemeketa Community College to build a transfer pathway for minority students primarily to become teachers with us in Woodburn at a community-based setting. So that's what these stories are focused on. I won't get into how we got to Woodburn. It has to do with Pacific starting its football team, oddly enough. But there was a pathway to Woodburn that was very serendipitous and highly supported by our president, Leslie Halleck. So, but it's very neat to be there. I want to share just a little snapshot of 3 Chemeketa students that we're working with right now to be able to start with us in Woodburn as junior students this fall. Our program is a Bachelor of Education in Elementary Teaching and English Language Learning that articulates with the community college. So you go to the community college for 2 years, you take our transfer courses, and then you can come and spend 2 years with us in Woodburn and become authorized in early childhood and elementary levels, and also the ESOL endorsement. Earlier this year, we met Najma. She was referred to us by one of the Chemeketa advisors because she had applied to go to Portland State after her 2-year transfer was done at Chemeketa, but she lives in Kaiser and her parents don't speak English, and she really wanted to stay closer to home. So she was referred to us in Woodburn. She's a great gal. Her story is that they came here from India when she was a 3rd grader. She knew no English. She went to elementary school here in Salem, and the teachers rescued her. I said, well, what did you do at first? She said, I cried for the first month because all this was happening and I couldn't understand any of it. But teachers took her under their wing. She was actually quite good at math from her schooling in India, but language was the big challenge. And she said that when she got into ELL programs in middle school, it was the greatest thing she'd ever experienced, because she was finally with other kids who struggle with language as well, and she didn't have to be ashamed to try and fail and stumble over learning English as a young child. And so she wants to give back to give back to kids what was given to her as an elementary teacher. One of the challenges that we've run into with Najma is that she'll be finishing her Associate of Arts for Oregon transfer degree at Chemeketa, but at that point she'll no longer be eligible for financial aid until she comes to Pacific and is in a Pacific program. So we've done a lot of work to create something called a consortium agreement with Chemeketa to bridge that over so she can continue to take courses at Chemeketa and actually get financial aid through Pacific. The next student is Daniel. He's a recent person that we've been mentoring and advising. He found out about us from an advisor at North Salem High School, where he had done some volunteer work working with kids there, and he was intending possibly to transfer to Western Oregon, but was finding finances and other thing a problem. And I was just talking to him about his experience, and he's been here in the United States since he was 13. So he's much newer to the culture, much newer to the language. And when he began at Chemeketa, he said he took their placement test on reading and writing 7 times, and kept going back for help, and kept rewriting and reworking with his mentors at North Salem High School so he could be placed in a high enough class so he could start taking classes that count immediately, if that makes sense. We used to call them remedial classes, they're developmental classes, but one thing we've learned is that is an enormous time and money consumption that many of the students we'd like to become teachers go through. So I call Daniel my grit example, 7 times taking a placement test. And then there's Carla. We met Carla earlier in the year. She's a brand new student at Chemeketa, and I looked at her transcript, and she's right on everything. She's not taking any developmental classes. She has our program. She'll be there for 2 years, and she'll come straight to Pacific. And then I got an email shortly thereafter saying, well, my advisor at Chemeketa thought it was important that I let you know that I'm undocumented. And I'm here under deferred action, and what can your institution do for me? And in asking around, we didn't have a good answer to that question. And we've since found some answers. But these are 3 examples of the kinds of Oregon students, young students, just out of high school, who we're working with right now to become teachers through our community-based program in Woodburn. This story started 2 years ago or so when we...
Kevin, I hate to cut you off,
yes.
I'm just kind of in the evil timekeeper.
Okay, where are we?
Trying to, probably need to move on with the other 2 if we're going to stay within this.
Oh, I thought we had 10 total. Oh, right.
I'm at 4, so.
Okay.
If you need one of my minutes, you can have.
Great. Well, we'll switch over to Debbie,
Okay.
and then we'll see where it goes.
Okay, cool. Tell me if I'm in the right spot here. Am I?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Debbie Clump. I'm a math teacher at Tillamook High School, and I'm also the district coordinator for Tillamook School District for Teach Oregon. And a little bit about Tillamook. If you haven't been there, it's unfortunate if you haven't. They have great recreation and amazing cheese. Tillamook is on the North Oregon coast. It is rural. It is not very close to universities, and so the opportunity to have student teachers in our district has been minimal. So as part of our participation in the PAC, that is changing. And it starts tomorrow. Tomorrow, 6 students from George Fox University and their university supervisor will be visiting our elementary schools, previewing their student teaching placement for the 2014-2015 school year. And that is just very exciting for us. So, not something that has happened in the past for us. And so these students are going to be an hour and a half from their university. So our challenge that we came up with for them also, how do we provide housing for them? We came up with the idea we are going to house them with minority families in Tillamook. And so giving them the opportunity, these pre-service teachers, the opportunity to not only experience the culture of a rural community, but the culture of a minority family in addition. So then we have student teachers, we have housing. How do we find these housing placements? So the next thing that we have done is we have worked with, and are in the process of working with, the Latino community in Tillamook, and they are helping us develop characteristics and qualities for the types of families that we want, that they want these student teachers to be with. So 3 new things in Tillamook that have not happened in the past, and they're all about the partnership.
It's fantastic.
We're very excited.
You can imagine the learning that's going to take place in those homestays for some of the candidates. Hilda had kind of prompted this with what does it look like and what does it feel like. I'll just cut to the chase of what does it feel like. For me, I started off 16 years ago as a normal professor who was going to teach and sit in my office and think a lot. And now in working through these issues, I'm having to become a mentor, an advocate. I spend a lot of time building relationships. And frankly, the feeling of these changes for me at times is very painful because I realize what I don't know as I talk to these prospective students and understand their story better. I realize that I'm coming up against systemic barriers both inside my own institution and outside that I don't know how to overcome those. You know, I haven't felt this way since graduate school physics, where I could actually really fail at this. But it's a constant challenge and excitement to keep, to try and to get into these spaces. So it feels very different for me than my life as a professor probably 5 years ago.
You're way different than you were 5 years ago. Do you guys have questions for us about?
I just want to make sure, Kathy, did you have anything you were going to present?
Not crazy. I'll just make one statement. Just as the coach for this consortium, which is a partnership of 4 school districts, a community college, and 2 universities. That unique partnership, I think, has really just created a foundation for some innovation. And as a school reformer for many years, I'm used to hearing, here's why we can't. This is why we can't. We've always done it this way. At the table I sit at with these folks, I hear, I wonder how we could. And they create and they think and they dream and they implement very rapidly. So that this combination of high expectation through Chalkboard and high support through the grant, I think, has been really critical for this group.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks.
Comment, Yvonne?
I just wanted to say that I'm eager and impatient to find out what you learn and how we get to apply it to the other programs. Specifically, I know Pacific offers, we found out last year, $990,000 worth of scholarships to students in the Forest Grove area. So we have a lot of kids going to Pacific and benefiting kids who couldn't afford to go otherwise. What I don't know is how many of those kids are undocumented. We have a lot of undocumented kids who are striving really hard, graduating, they're college and career ready. They want to stay local, want to stay close, and many of them want to get teaching license and stay right there in Forest Grove. But the door is shut for them because of not having documentation. So I just want to call out, as soon as you have some solutions, please call us because we'd love to work with you on them, even though we're not part of the Chalkboard project. And I'm sure that's the same for districts across the state. As soon as we can find these things, I'd love to start applying them. Thank you.
Thank you, exciting. So next up will be empowering teachers and raising student achievement. It's Matt Yoshioka and Athena Nelson from Pendleton. I have the privilege of knowing both of these individuals quite well, and I am giving you a testimonial that these two folks really walk the walk with all kids every day.
Thank you very much. My name is Matt Yoshioka. I'm the principal of Centers Middle School in Pendleton. I've been the principal for 5 years and been there at the middle school for about 14 and love working with middle school students. I've been fortunate enough to be involved with the class project and the programs that have gone along with that. And I'll let Athena introduce herself.
My name is Athena Nelson. I'm actually from this side of the state originally, Sheridan, Oregon. Went to Western and started teaching in Salem and have been teaching now in Pendleton for 15 years, third graders. Used to talking to much shorter people, so. But I'm really happy to be here representing the class project. It's by far one of the most exciting things I've ever had the privilege of having anything to do with.
So the format we'd like to follow is we kind of pose some questions as if you're asking us questions. We're going to answer them from the perspective of a building principal, and then Athena will answer from the perspective of a teacher that's involved with the class project. So the first question is, how has your involvement in the class or collaboration grant changed your district or building's culture? And I can speak for Centers Middle School. It has been a huge, a dramatic change, a tangible change in the culture of our school. Specifically, there is so much more confidence seen from the teachers in seeking out their own professional development, what they are interested in doing and learning about, and the confidence of not being fearful of trying it in their classroom and feeling like if they fail they're going to be marked down for it or criticized for it. What we're seeing is a lot of the students taking on more responsibility for their education because the teachers are taking on more responsibility for the improvement of the instruction in their classroom. I think the biggest thing that I have seen is the transparency that's taken place. The teachers are involved at every level on decisions with the budget, with how funds are used, with professional development. Their ideas are listened to, they're followed through with. The trust between administration and teachers has never been better there. There are many programs that have been started, and Athena can speak to some of those, but the ones that stand out in my mind are specifically the professional development opportunities, the mentoring program that's been created by the teachers and run by the teachers. And so it's the new teachers that say what they need, and it's the retired teachers in our district that help them get it. It's been incredible to watch and see. The other piece that's real important is, well, my mind went blank. I'll let Athena talk now. So.
Well, this all began with the opportunity to come together and dream big for change for our students, and how can we raise morale and support each other, and just being given that opportunity started the ball rolling with raising morale. I think teachers, while everyone in the state, I'm sure, are feeling overwhelmed, we're feeling appreciated at the same time, and compensated, not just monetarily, but recognition for the work that's happening and understanding that we're at the forefront of a lot of change, and we're doing a lot of things first, it feels like, but we've, through the collaboration grant, been able to recognize people for those efforts. Like Matt said, all of our systems are so transparent now, from the evaluation system that was completely created collaboratively to processes for teacher leadership. It's not just that same person being picked over and over again. There's application process. Everything is, we'll advertise to all people for opportunities depending on your level of achievement on your evaluation. You would have those opportunities. Our doors have been open through some programs such as learning walks. We have every teacher takes 1 or 2 learning walks into peers' classrooms. We're learning from each other. And we have very, 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 very active PLCs. We meet district-wide with grade level PLCs once a week to work on district initiatives, and then look at data and see what we can do for raising student achievement. And we have teacher leaders for all of those PLCs that have been compensated through the collaboration grant.
You're a Monday late start, right?
We are a Monday late start for that work.
I remember what I was going to say. It's the teacher evaluation program has been huge for us because, as Athena said, the teachers wrote that and have ownership in it. The learning walks that Athena talked about have kind of trickled up into the administration. So we do learning walks as administrators in all the buildings in the district. That is professional development for us to get on the same page of what does good instruction look like, what does good feedback look like, how to deliver it effectively. It's expanded to the point where we have teachers now requesting and anxious to go observe other classrooms in other districts. They're hearing things around the state and wanting to go observe and bring those things back to the district. Instead of it coming from the administration or programs, it's coming from the teachers and initiating those interests that they have. The other piece is that when they come back from those professional development opportunities, they're given time through the grant, a substitute to take the day to kind of disseminate that information and then learn how they're going to apply it to their classroom and share it with their peers, so that everyone gets it. Instead of a one and done, we're able to bring in professional development. We've had Joe Robinson come, we've had Shannon McCall, we've had Kevin Feldman, and it's not a one and done. They come and then they come back every couple months all year, and they're modeling what good teaching looks like. The teachers are taking that back to the classroom. Some of the teachers are taking the initiative to write a proposal to do a book study, and so teachers are signing up to do book studies together and improve their craft that way. So,
with all of those professional development opportunities that we've had this year that have been embedded, we always leave with next steps and some sort of task and activity then that we're going to bring back to the table. And we have certain teachers who have become experts, be it on, we've worked hard on math problem solving this year, and we had an outside person come in many times, and then she modeled in our classroom, and then we recognized those teachers who are high achieving in those areas with their students, and people have went and done learning walks in those classrooms. It's definitely all the pieces of the puzzle fitting together with professional development, and we're compensating those teachers as well.
One of the best parts for me that I saw this year is that even just 2 years ago, if I asked some teachers to do a presentation in a staff meeting, the answer was no. They did not want to put themselves out there with their peers. And just recently we had a staff meeting, the entire staff meeting, the training and service day was done by the teachers. They just shared with their peers what they're doing in their classrooms. And that's really taken down those walls of fear and changed the culture there. Athena mentioned that the teachers are compensated, and I just want to say that it was really powerful for the teachers to be on a committee and to say, hey, we just got this grant. What do you want to do with this money to improve instruction in this district and in your building? And I think that's a unique opportunity and a powerful one that our teachers haven't had before, and that's why it's really taken off. So, the other question I thought about is how has it affected student outcomes? How has this increased student achievement, which is really important? And last year we were a pilot district for the student growth goals. This year we're full implementation. It's really exciting at this point to see all of the teachers monitoring throughout the year the growth of their students. Many of them are seeing that they set their goals perhaps a little too lofty, and some maybe not as rigorous as they should have, because by mid-year they're seeing most of their students have achieved their goal. So they're rewriting that goal. Okay, it's mid-year, I need to rewrite this, we can do more by the end of the year. I'm excited, it's really exciting to have teachers come in and bring in data and put it on my desk and say, look, I taught, they didn't get it, we retaught, and look how many got it now. And this is really working. It's validating to the teachers to be able to see that information as an educator.
And as we're learning to really measure and analyze those student outcomes, we're still working towards that. We've had a data team trained, but what I hear more than anything else from teachers is I have never been so tuned in to achievement or student growth for all of my students, all tiers of children, not just those right in the middle that we know how to reach best. So again, being at the forefront has been tough, but we are feel blessed to have been given opportunities to build and learn how to gauge those student outcomes. It's a process. What is adequate growth?
You guys have done some pretty groundbreaking work with your administrative evaluation system. Could you share a little bit on the percentage that administrators evaluated on student performance?
40% of my evaluation is based on student performance for my building. And so I'm more focused, obviously, as an administrator on student outcomes and growth and all of those programs that we're trying to make happen. It is a big part of it. It's a huge part of it. And what we're learning as a district is that the feedback we're giving to teachers as an observer, when I go and observe a teacher's classroom, the most essential part is getting to them as soon as possible after that observation to give them immediate feedback and follow-up to say, okay, when can I see this in your classroom, and make sure I come back to see that change happen.
I think you really modeled leadership there, because as we've moved to Senate Bill 290, that student growth area has been one that we're working through, and I know you use growth and goals and whatnot. But for the administrative team to set a high bar on their own evaluation, I think it just is, it typifies the relationship that you have with the teachers right now as mutual leaders moving forward. Are there any, yeah?
Wow, 40%. I haven't seen any research that shows that there's actually tying student test scores to teachers is actually effective. So now you're tying it to administrators. So I will just tell you a story, because when you said that, my heart sunk. I was in the Beaverton School District and meeting with a newer teacher, and the administrator was not happy with the test scores. And it was all about the test scores. I just want to take us back, and I'm sorry, but here's what happened. This was a third-year teacher who was working extremely hard. She had 8 students on IEPs, and I believe it was something like 15 that were ELL students. And in that meeting, when I sat with that teacher alone, she was telling me how hard she was working to help these students. And when I sat in with the administrator, it was all about those test scores. It wasn't about taking care of those students. And I would just want to say, as I hear that, it really makes me nervous, because it is about the students. It is not about the test scores. It's about the overall education for our children. So I just need to say that.
I agree. I appreciate it. Trust me, my heart sunk too when I heard 40%, to be honest with you, a little bit. But you bring out a really good point, and that is that if the students aren't happy and safe and supported, they're not going to improve at all.
Well, Matt, you're not talking just test scores.
Not at all.
You guys have growth, you have
Not at
multiple
all.
indicators. You're looking at all of your teachers involved, elective teachers, music teachers, setting goals, and working on formative assessments. It's a battery.
What's nice is we have multiple measurements. So just as the teachers have their student growth goals, the administrators have their student growth goals, and we have multiple measurements of those. So we're not just focused in on.
It feels a lot less about test scores, I will say, because being third grade year 1 of Oaks, I felt like that is the only lens that I have been under for all of these years, and I teach at a very low socioeconomic school, and to always be compared to students B across the town that are very, very different has been tough, because we've always known our growth is exponential. And to talk about growth now, it's like a weight lifted off our shoulders. And we have focused a lot on multiple measures and understanding not all kids look the same, and we're going to give them multiple opportunities to show their adequate growth.
Perfect, thank you. And the other, you talked about your PLCs, and there was a question about what a PLC is, so a professional learning community.
Yes.
And my only question on your PLCs is, when you meet, you said you do district and site-based, is that right?
Yeah, this year with all of the initiatives, it's been a lot more district than.
Okay, so who does the agenda for your PLC meetings?
A teacher.
A teacher, so your group makes up, so you've got a group that meets on a regular basis and they make the agenda of what they're.
We do, we currently have a lot of tasks that we have to get done for district and state initiatives. So in the beginning of the year, we created our own timelines and our own priorities. We were told to set priorities. Some people have things already done, and so we've just been working through the priorities and looking at data and what's happening in our classroom.
When I hear you talk about how well it's working, we just need to share out that best practice about how, because you are so excited about what you're doing, and there are places where I think hearing from you is how that's working, what you put in place to make sure it's effective would really be helpful. So
We did used to have closed doors, for sure, across the district, and people didn't talk. I mean, I didn't even know the teachers necessarily who were teaching across town. It's a little town, and now they're definitely a united front for all students.
Dick, you have comments?
Yes, I appreciate, the test score, what have you, but outside of this room, people want to see achievement, and all we do outside this room, which I'm part of, we're top 10 of the nation of education, whatever that means, and we want to improve. So what is your benchmark? What is your grade?
What are the measurements that we're
Yeah,
using
exactly.
to know? That's a great question. The district is using, for example, we look at the Oaks assessment scores, obviously. The teachers set their own common assessments, and so we look at the state standards, we look at what we want those students to accomplish that year, the objectives of what they're going to learn at the end, and then they're tracking that data throughout the school year to show the student growth there. And so a lot of the teachers have students, they're learning that those students that are at the top are really hard to get them to grow very much because they're way up there already. And so they have different tiers of goals of growth that they want to see happen throughout the year, and that's reported back to the parents and to the students and to our community to show that their students are making growth towards achievement.
We're working on defining what 1 year's growth is for a typical grade level student, and then hopefully with our bottom tiers of learners, 1.5 years growth to start closing that achievement gap. How can we take them further? And defining adequate growth is difficult. That's something that, and some measures already have it. This is 1 year's growth. Some we're having as professionals to define what 1 year's growth is within those measures.
Dick, one
If I
more
can follow
question.
up, I don't know, Children's First of Oregon has this book with all these numbers in it. It says that you guys are 16% worth in third grade math proficiency according to overall state numbers, and your third grade reading proficiency is 11% worse. So next year, are you going to be better than that then? I mean, is that a grade that you're looking at?
We have our achievement, we're looking at goals, and we have goals set
Well, the
to
whole point
improve.
though is when you're talking to the lay people that we need the support of in Oregon to support education, we have to come up with some type of improvement. So
Tangible, something hard, tangible to put out there that they can understand. That
yeah,
shows
kind of like how
ratings
many
and-
cars you sell every day.
Yeah.
But I'm serious though, it's hard for me to defend when we're also like the duration of classes. Or we have a short school year. Like Oregonians take a big piece, and I guess that's conflicting. But we're a real short school year and all of that. But what you just presented, that your efficiencies are within a year is going to have betterment of third grade reading and all that.
That is absolutely our goal, and that's the outcome that we're expecting. And one thing is, you can't change culture in a year, and these are students that are benefiting from improved teaching strategies from 1 or 2 years worth. our hope is that when we see these kindergartners get to 6th, 7th grade and they've had this for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, that's when we'll really see a difference that's there for those students.
Yeah.
I think, Dick, when we look at this, we did the kindergarten readiness assessment this year for the first time. And you're looking at a community who may have some high needs students who are coming in. And what are we doing to make a difference and prepare them to learn? Because I think if you look at the kindergarten readiness results, we have a long ways to go. And so when people want to see these results, I would encourage those people who want to see results to walk into one of our schools and see what's going on and volunteer, and they will learn the great work that's going on and how we're trying to make a difference in the lives of our students.
Matt and Athena, we sure appreciate
You
the
bet.
work going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up are the supportive environments for beginning educators. We have Sue and Mandy from Portland. Welcome.
Hi. I would like to introduce Tu Trong. She is a mentor in Portland Public Schools, along with Mandy and your last name? Carrie. And she is a second year, third grade teacher. Second grade teacher. Second grade teacher.
Shall we start? Yeah. Hi. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and share our mentoring work. Can you guys hear me? Or okay. I am a pre-K 5 mentor. I also work with Head Start. I'm currently in 11 schools and I work with 16 new teachers. And we want to share with you about what the mentoring program has done for our new teachers. And the question was change in culture in classrooms or school buildings as a result of the mentoring relationship. I think one of the key things is building a relationship in order to start talking about best practices in your teaching. And part of this is building relationships and trust, and I've been really fortunate enough to work with Mandy for 2 years. And we use the gradual release of responsibility model that I do, we do, you do together. And we focus on teaching, learning, and lesson planning. One of the benefits of mentoring as well is you get differentiated, customized opportunities for professional development. So Mandy and we meet weekly, at least an hour. It's a 90-hour requirement. And it's a collaborative process, so she sets the focus. And we always put student achievement at the center. Another plus is the observation feedback model. So I go in and I observe, and she sets the focus. And it's a strengths-based model, so I'm focusing on what are your strengths. And then it's very non-evaluative, so I'm not her administrator, I'm her peer. And so we focus on 1 or 2 things we can work on for next time. Another benefit is, as a mentor, I can help her establish common language, expectations, and standards for instruction. That's at the classroom level, the building level, and the district level. As a mentor, I meet with building administrators, principals, every 6 to 8 weeks to share and discuss mentoring work and goals. And this has been really a great way to build a relationship with the principal to kind of let them know what their goals are for their teachers, and then I can also share with Mandy, and we kind of talk about how we can work towards those goals. Another key piece we've done is called analysis of student work. We're looking at student work, and we're focusing on individual students by their names, and we're also using the equity lens. So within Portland, we use the Courageous Conversations protocol, and that's the way we develop differentiated lesson plans. So we're looking at individual students by whether they're meeting, below meeting, at standards, and above. This mentoring work also creates opportunities for us to have metacognition. We do a lot of thinking, a lot of talking, a lot of processing. And one of the really exciting things I've seen this year as a second year with Mandy is the ability to develop teacher leaders within buildings. So Mandy is learning these best practices and skills, and she's sharing it within her building. Another piece is networking and connecting with veteran teachers, so the opportunity to build that connections and relationships. So the idea that you have that expertise within your buildings, within your district, and how can we share that? And then one of the things that we want to see kind of moving forward is the continued funding for the mentoring program. One of the benefits this year is that the ODE grant helped our mentoring team kind of build our practice by shadowing some more developed mentoring programs like in Santa Cruz. They've been doing the mentoring work for 25 years, so we're able to go and shadow their work. And also the grant also provided us the opportunity to have 3 half-day curriculum mapping days for our mentees. So we pulled them out 3 times during the year and we did specific curriculum mapping on content areas. And we brought all our mentees together. So we have a caseload of over 129 and it's been really exciting work. Mandy.
Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me well? As Jonah introduced, I am in my 2nd year of teaching. I teach 2nd grade, and I'm also in my 2nd year in the mentoring program, and I'm excited to tell you a little bit about my experience being a mentee. The mentoring program has helped guide me on the journey of becoming the kind of teacher that I really want to be. It's helped me in my practice in so many ways. For instance, strengthening my classroom management, setting clear expectations, and I've been able to explore a lot of different professional developments with the encouragement of 2. That's really made me a more confident teacher, and it's really helped strengthen the relationship that I have with my students, as well as this relationship my students have with each other, which is so important. Relationships are really the basis of where we start in education, and it shouldn't be understated. I've received invaluable help in navigating the district's curriculum and assessments, and as a new teacher to a new district, that can be really tricky, especially when everything is all new and you've got all these resources online, and it really helps to have someone that you can talk with that has that experience that can say, hey, did you know about this resource? Let me show you how to find it, and now let me show you how to use it. And so with that, I've been able to analyze student data, and I've been able to more effectively teach the curriculum and the differentiating my the different lessons in my group. So for instance, last year I started out with a very challenging class, and so my big focus was classroom management and being able to understand the curriculum and teach it well. This year, it's very exciting that now I feel I have the curriculum under my belt. I can really focus on that differentiation so that my students at their various levels, and I have a wide range, IEPs, students that are English language learners, I can make sure that they're all getting the education that they deserve, which is really exciting to see my growth. I've been strongly encouraged to seek out and attend professional developments and work closely with my colleagues, not just within my school, but within the school district, and having an opportunity to collaborate, as well as collaborating with my mentor, has really helped and strengthened my own practice. The benefits of having a regular observation and objective feedback in your first years of teaching is invaluable. 2 has helped me refine my practice in so many ways and make stronger connections to my students and to their families. The culture of new teachers that the mentoring program is cultivating is one that is better able to navigate their district's curriculum, collaborate with their colleagues, and seek professional development and best practices. And I believe I'm a stronger and more confident teacher because of this program. In moving forward, I would like to see this program continue. I feel like it's really helped me and strengthened my practice. And I know through some of the colleagues that I met through the mentoring program that they feel that way as well. I think having an opportunity to collaborate, as well as to dive a little bit more deeply into the curriculum and into the topics that we as teachers feel we need support in, is so helpful. And we'd like to see it continue.
Thank you. Questions? To Amanda. Tammy.
I'm going to just focus on our relatively new teacher here. We lose about 30% of our new teachers in the first 5 years, at least that's the data. We say that we're looking at things from the 30,000 or 40,000 foot level. Is there something we need to know from your perspective that we need to do differently at this level that will impact, and I'm suspecting that the teacher mentor program is a part of that, but could you just address that for about 90 seconds? What should we be doing? What do we need to be thinking about at a policy level that's going to impact that data and some other data too?
Well, I believe that teaching is a hard job. And I think if you've never been in a classroom, you don't quite appreciate how much time and effort goes into it. And I think that having this mentoring program, I think if it was available to all new teachers, I think it would make a world of difference in the retention of new teachers. I think some teachers, and I can only speak my truth, so I'm generalizing here, but I think that a lot of new teachers that decide that after 1 or 2 years it's time to pursue something else, I think that they haven't been receiving the support that they need to feel successful. It can be really difficult to be observed and have a principal come in and look at your work and your practice only a couple of times a year and not really quite see what's happening on a daily basis. And having that support from your principal, from your administrators, from your colleagues really helps make you feel like you're a part of that community and that you're supported. And with the mentoring program, I feel like too really helped me to build some of those connections within my district and within my school. So I feel like the mentoring program is good, and if it could continue, I think that would help a lot.
Samuel, I did my dissertation on teacher attrition, and at that
I knew that.
it was 50%. If you work in a high poverty school, 50% don't make it to their 6th year. That's what our attrition rates are, working with our tough kids.
I think also it's your first years as a teacher are your toughest years.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I would say up to the first 5 years are really difficult, and I think that having that support to help you get through those first years would really increase your
So
retention.
here's my question. In my dissertation, what I found is the central player to teacher attrition is the building principal, because he or she is the one that sets the stage for mentor programs, professional learning communities, aligned curriculum support, etc. Just briefly, tell me what's the role of the principal in this mentor program?
So part of the role of administrators as mentors, we go in every 6 to 8 weeks and inform them of our mentoring goals. So this is new to Portland. This is our 2nd year. We have 1 more year of the grant. And it's been really beneficial to communicate with administrators exactly what we're doing. My relationship with Mandy is confidential unless there's a safety concern about students, then I go directly to the administrator. But we are informing exactly what we're doing, and it's a nice conversation that we're all on the same page. So the administrator may share with me, okay, we're working on our SMART goals. Could you support my new teacher in how to go through this language? For example, Mandy had a formal observation. Her administrator gave me a handout saying these are the SIOP, the sheltered instruction strategies I'll be looking for. So Mandy and I went through the lesson that she was teaching. What are 1 or 2 strategies you want to teach within your lesson? So when our administrator came in, she got feedback about the instructions that she's using, and then also I will give her feedback as well. So we're kind of merging. It's the idea that we're all on the same page, that common language. A lot of administrators are saying, I wish I could be in the classroom as much as you can. And I think that's one of the benefits of the mentor program. I would have to say though, I have 16 teachers, that's a lot. So if I could decrease the ratio, that'd be great. I'm not complaining, but if I could ask for something, it's really powerful to work with new teachers. They're energized, they're ready to go, and but the thing is, it's just really powerful to meet with administrators, and you get to see the growth. So every meeting as a team, there's a team of 10 of us, and we're going to grow our team next year. We actually have meetings weekly, and we talk about our goals as mentors. So we've also gone through training through OD in the New Teacher Center. So I think Mandy is also talking about, she's doing a lot of learning. As a mentor, I'm learning as well. And this is a 3-year cycle, so the idea is I would then go back into the classroom and then share my best practices. So the idea is it's a collaborative process. We're all learning, and it's just really exciting to be a part of it.
So you're saying that you have too high a class size with your mentor teachers?
I'm sorry? Yes, I do. If I'm going to be here, and I think ideally, 12 would be great. 16 I can't be there.
Here we go.
I can do it because I'm a teacher and I will make it work. But if I could, that would be great. And, I think the benefits is, I've worked with Mandy for the last 2 years, and I've seen the growth, and it's been really exciting to see where she started and where I've started and how we're going through this together. Even our administrator said it's from year 1 to year 2, he was just so excited here. And the students also, right? We're putting students at center. She knows her students better. I know her students, and some of the strategies.
Well, your enthusiasm is infectious. Love hearing from the classroom. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah. So I think the point that you just made is very well taken, and Matt mentioned the work that he's doing. We have administrators who are asked to evaluate, and we don't have mentor programs in some of our districts, and they're asked to evaluate 30, 40, in some schools it gets way up there. So if, where we're sitting, what are we doing to make sure that the administrators have the support that they need to be able to do really structured conversations with our new educators? Because the amount of money that we spend bringing someone in new and then losing them in their first 5 years is really breaking the bank. So why don't we invest in getting the support that we need early and keeping those educators working? Thank you for your work.
Thank you guys, appreciate it.
I just wanted to acknowledge Lynn Shalom Ferguson. She is also the assistant director of the Portland mentoring program, and she was the one that, along with Tammy Grisendahl, provided us these wonderful mentor and mentee days.
Lynn is amazing.
Exciting work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She's obviously amazing. She had teachers come up and speak. Okay, Lindsay, you are up next with supporting teacher leadership. Good to have you back.
So just while Lindsay is coming on up with Colleen, I just want to share that I mentioned an advisory group, and that we have really engaged in some powerful conversations with some of the teachers and leaders in OEA and other groups around how we are using this network to develop leadership. So I'm thrilled that they can come in and chat about their vision and ideas and observations.
I want to make sure too, we've got Colleen as well, so welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Dr. Golden, members of the OEIB. It's great to be back here. We wanted to talk just a little bit today about teacher leadership, and I think what's ironic about that is we just heard about it from the panels that just came up, so it sort of feels like we're up here to say what's already been said. And so maybe what I'll do is focus a little bit on context for how we empower teacher leadership. And I think Colleen is prepared to talk a little bit about what are some of the possibilities of how we can move that forward in a more systemic way, which I think is really important when we talk about student learning and meeting the 40-40-20 goals. I am Lindsay Gaps. I'm the director of the Center for Great Public Schools, if I didn't say that already. And we were created by OEA members, I think over about 2 or 3 years ago, with the real purpose of empowering educator leadership within our schools, our school districts, and across the state. And when we talk about educator leadership, teacher leadership is a component of that. There's also our instructional assistants and school counselors and community college faculty, a number of folks that play a critical role along the learning continuum in making sure that we're successful. And because of the complexity of teaching as a clinical practice, leadership is really critical in this realm. And it's sort of how do we connect that leadership throughout the system. And that's where I sort of want to start my comments today. As a center, we're sort of emerging within OEA through the work of teacher leaders like those you've heard today, which is a place for folks to come together and really collaborate and work together around critical areas of practice. Issues around Common Core and that shift, equity and culturally responsive pedagogy, looking at school improvement and the opportunities to build strong school improvement teams and strong PLCs, as has been mentioned. And it's also to get to that connecting piece, which is how we empower educators in policy making within the school community, at the district and state level, so that we are ensuring that effective practice is informing policy, because ultimately that'll lead back to the outcomes we want to see for our kids. So that's sort of our work in a nutshell. I think that's a good definition for the range of teacher leadership. It can exist in a school, in a PLC, in a classroom, but it can also exist throughout the system in helping you all as policymakers do your work effectively. So context, just mentioned a couple of opportunities here. So we've got teacher leadership already occurring, and I thought the great thing that I heard from the panels before was this notion of collaboration and culture. So to me, that seems to be the real work that we have to do. We got to get at that collaboration and build that at the school level all the way through the system. And part of that is looking at the ways in which that system empowers collaboration and supports that in going the directions we need to go. So we just completed the Teaching, Empowering, Leading, and Learning survey last night. Just shy of 60%, but 59.3, somewhere in there. 62% of schools have filled that out. Let's use that tool as a way to have conversation around collaboration and collaborative leadership. That gets at so much of the critical elements of teacher leadership. And so that's something that we hope to partner with the OEIB around. And we appreciate the leadership of Dr. Golden and Deputy Superintendent Rob Saxton and the Governor in making that happen. Teacher evaluation design teams, we've really had the joy of working with these collaborative teams around the state. We've done hundreds of trainings with teacher design teams. And that isn't just about building evaluation systems, that's really a lens on practice and developing systems of collaboration as a lens on effective practice. And so we see that as something that must continue beyond just the design of these systems. But so how do you take those collaborative processes and then build those out to be more reflective of the different teaching and learning challenges that we face? We also have the Achievement Complex, which I think we're going to hear about if I stop talking, which is next on the agenda or somewhere. How does teacher leadership link to the Achievement Complex? So again, practice is informing the strategies and resource allocation decisions that districts are making to get to the student outcomes that they want to get to. And lastly, I'm part of a coalition, some of the people on this panel and one person I'm sitting next to around the quality teaching and learning. One of the things that we put forward as a way to help drive teacher leadership was this notion of nationally board certified teachers. And this is the highest certification a teacher can get. We put forward to the legislature, I think 4 years ago now, Hilda, you helped me with this, funding to help teachers go through that certification process. We got some funding, and then with the state budget the way it was, that funding went away. I think we'd like to see that as a place where we could invest some more time. Our center is the candidate support provider for the state. So we have the opportunity to help communicate and develop networks with those teachers, but how can the state really help with that process as one way of building some capacity at the school level, but also creating the types of leaders who then can be helpful in developing some of the policy opportunities based on the practice we want to see in our schools. So I'll just sort of put that out there as a question. So as we look at the network, which is really trying to bridge collaboration and teachers learning from teachers around practice, how does the network also serve as a connector of that important link between practice and policy and bring some of these different structures and protocols together into a comprehensive strategy? And I think that's a great conversation for the OEIB to continue to engage in, and we just appreciate the opportunity to be here today. With that, I'll hand it over to Colleen to talk a little bit more specifically about teacher leadership.
Good afternoon. I love being last because there are so many good things that have just gone before us, and talking with you today. For the record, I'm Colleen Milam. I have the privilege of working in the Center for Great Public Schools in a brand new position there around what Lindsay described in terms of merging that whole policy and practice. So I want to share with you, but I would say probably reinforce more what you've just heard in terms of the potential for teacher leadership, the power and the promise of teacher leadership in this work. And when we think about the network, we think about networks within schools and within districts. You heard some examples of that today. We need to think about this potential network also across schools and districts. So what does that look like? What's the possibility there? And I think that's the challenge before all of us. Not in separate silos, but collectively. So I was going to share a scenario with you because I wanted to provide the context, and I'm going to do this quickly because I think it really provides a focus on this notion of teacher leadership, both informal and formal. And as we think about the network, how are we really reinforcing the informal teacher leadership opportunities and then more formal opportunities? Because there's some policy decisions around those more formal opportunities. So this really builds on what Pendleton was talking about. But I'm going to share with you a principal and 2 teacher leaders, along with other teachers in a school district, had tremendous success over 5 years in terms of their student achievement. And so they're preparing to go before their local board. You can be that local board. So here are some things that they're going to discuss. First of all, they're going to talk about the achievement of their students, but they're digging deeper. And that's what this is about in terms of practice and teacher leadership, is digging beneath. And is that achievement just based on those test scores, or what else is going on? One of the things that we do or we don't do in education is we don't talk about the journey oftentimes. We don't talk about all the warts and problems we've had along the way to the point of success. So what are those kinds of things that we do within education to really help those kids achieve, to learn, to grow, and achieve? So in this particular instance, they're going to talk about collective impact and the role of teacher leadership, informal and formal, within their district. So for example, a third-year teacher who served on a mentoring team helped a first-year teacher with classroom management by providing more engaging reading material for the first-year teacher's students, which resulted in significant gains in reading. A 25-year veteran teacher opened her classroom to other teachers to observe how she managed students in a science inquiry lab. Teachers created relationships of trust and respect and shared materials and strategies that led to improvement in 8th grade science assessments. A teacher who served as an instructor at a regional teacher academy described how she led a team of 3rd grade teachers in implementing instructional strategies to improve mathematics problem solving and boost student performance on cognitive formative assessments. Another teacher described how he is collaborating with a nearby university to create an online discussion group of teachers inside and outside the school district to identify and implement effective research-based reading interventions for English language learners. The principal offered her perspective of how her effectiveness as a principal has increased by empowering the teachers to help shape the school's direction and values by supporting the use of teacher leaders and focusing on practice. And finally, the principal also acknowledged the support of the superintendent, the local board, and community for providing time and resources they needed to implement this collective leadership model. So, teacher leadership inside a school and district, or in this case, inside a school. So when we think about this example, and you think about the presentation that you just had from Pendleton, what does those 2 examples tell us about teacher leadership and also principal leadership? Here are a couple of things. Teacher leaders can enhance the capacity of the principal. The principal cannot do his or her own work without engaging that expertise on the knowledge base around practice. And teacher leaders cannot be effective or successful without that support and engagement and confidence from a principal that you're going to lead this effort. So it's that, two great examples. When you think about the principal in Pendleton, or this particular principal, the confidence to say, you people have the expertise, now let's lead this thing together. And it's that culture change that you heard about from Pendleton around digging deeper and saying, what does impact student performance? For a long time, we've debated standards, we argue about standards, and we take a lot of time talking about standards. Standards are extremely important for our education and the learning of our students. And we've also spent a whole lot of time talking about state assessments. Assessments are also important, a variety of assessments. What the Network for Quality Teaching and Learning does finally is elevate practice and the resources allocated to building a strong foundation of practice. Does this exist in some schools? You just heard a couple of examples. But is it intentional? And for me, because I've been hanging around for a while, my number one question for everything we're doing, can we sustain it after we're all gone? Can we sustain it? What are we doing to put in place that when all of us are gone off doing whatever, and teachers leave and principals leave, the culture of that school has been established and it can grow and develop. So,
can I get you to tie up with
yes, very quickly. So why is it important in terms of teacher leadership? I think you saw some examples of teachers here today. Retaining strong teachers, those teachers that want to remain as a teacher. What can we do to really offer them opportunities? They don't want to go into administration, they want to lead in terms of practice. It's so critical. Also, recruiting talented individuals that perhaps have not even thought about teaching. And when I had the opportunity to talk to Debbie out in the hall, she has a number of minority students. She wants those students to be teachers. They didn't have a clue that they might have the potential to be teachers. So, really recruiting them and just tapping into that professional practice. So what are the possibilities? I think there are a number of strategies, and I'm going to conclude, but there are a number of strategies that we can have further conversations about. And in terms of, obviously, resources, but it's not just financial resources. It's brain power. It's coming together collectively across organizations and agencies and entities and recognizing the power we have in teachers and their knowledge base about practice. Thanks.
Appreciate it, Nancy. Thanks. We have an activity at the end now, dear Hill.
That's correct, because we are educators. And Lindsay said he's leaving now. So what we'd really like to do is to close out this review with an opportunity for each of the board members to respond to one or both of the two questions that we provided you. And if you would rather, if you have an observation that's just really burning in your mind, please feel free to share that. So I'm looking around to see who's giving me. Hannah, you got eye contact. I'm going to start with Dick right next to you, and we'll just. That's how it works.
Dick, I'm just here to help you.
That's how it works, Dick. And then we'll just go to our left here. Thank you.
What are we doing? I'd make a couple of comments, like all of you are going to be gone. Somebody said it's my birthday. I hope it's not me. The other one was that the principals and the teachers. It's kind of like last night at the ball game. Not one of those coaches scored a basket. Not one. John Wooden didn't score a basket. 2 Super Bowl guys didn't score a basket. Coaches. Okay, what are we doing now?
So just any reactions in terms of features of professional networks that you've been affiliated with? If you'd like, Hannah could go first and model for you.
Yeah, model.
Let me learn to model
Yeah.
that. Okay, so the conversations have to be authentic. They have to come from the heart. And I think the comment made, it is about the relationships in the work that we do. And it needs to be led by those who are embedded in the reality of what's going on. So having those who are working in a PLC actually make the agenda is important. And I think the ones that have been successful for me have been the ones that have focused on the whole student. And it's about making a difference in their lives. Fast forwarding to 2016, what indicators would we have? We would be investing in more mentors because we're hiring so many educators to our profession to make sure we're meeting the needs of our students. And we would be able to walk into a staff room and see people sitting together and enjoying each other's company. So that love of learning and that love of church teaching is back in our schools. That's what I would.
Thank you.
Okay.
Dick, was that helpful?
The first question there, in my business, we have what we call dealer 20 groups. It's where we go off of our businesses, we meet with other people throughout the United States and get ideas. I think it's important to have the professional networks, have peers together, and you soon find out who's big hat, no cattle, but you find out people who really know what they're talking about in practice that. fast forward to 16 is that we need the scorecard. We need to keep score on the improvements so we have the total population is behind the education portion. Right now, I think there's a gap on that because of all the headlines in the papers and all of that. That's, you know, that we're this and that. We need some W's. And all the professionals that I've met in teaching, I'm from a teaching family. For some reason, Oregon has not met its expectations, and I think now is the time to do that. So we need to keep score and show the W's that we, the wins that we have as we move forward.
Just to comment on that, I'm so proud that you brought that up, because part of what we are doing also is using the TEL survey as a baseline. I was absolutely amazed when I looked at the instrument to see how many items are going to give us a sense of the culture in schools, the professional development supports, and how we are supporting our educators. And we didn't have that before. So I think that's a good first start. So thank you both. Dr. Curtis?
So on the first question, I guess what I would like is to see that all professionals have the opportunity to participate in a PLC network or some kind of like that. And I'm thinking specifically about reports we've had at the best practice panel about rural educators or small school districts where it's really difficult to do that kind of pairing. So I know it will take some really creative thinking to figure out how to do that. I don't know if we have the data right now on how many people have those opportunities. And I guess in addition to having the opportunity, I want to balance that also with an expectation. I've been given that feedback in the different districts I've been in that when it's only invitational, you tend to get the people who are comfortable with sharing their practice and that kind of thing. And sometimes it's not the people who most might need that, even if they want it, just because of the structure of how, you know, our organizations are. And I know in our district, it's been helpful to have that tight and loose sort of expectation where our teachers do identify what they talk about and what that agenda is, but there is an expectation they're all in them and that we're working on some things together, which have included the multiple measures and those kinds of things that look at the full child. I agree that's important. So I guess that also goes to the second one, and that's about, do we have a metric on that or a way we could sort of measure that? The other thing would be, I still love the anecdotal, or I guess I should say qualitative aspect of what is valuable to teachers in those roles. I mean, I love these stories, but if there is a way to share that using the portal, I think I'm already seeing you shake your head, so I won't belabor that. And then I still really, really love the idea of videos on our own state portal. I know right now there's a lot that's already out there. At least people tell me that, but I have no idea where to go find those really quickly to use in my professional development. But I would love to know where those are. I would love to know what teachers think are the most helpful and most valuable, so some way to rate them. So if a teacher uses it or sees it and says, this was really helpful to me because, that would be helpful. And then eventually having our own Oregon teachers on there, where they're from, because that would help facilitate networking.
Excellent, thank you so much. Nancy?
Well, I'm going to be short just because I want to leave time for the board, but I just want to say teacher empowerment is just the most powerful thing possible. Thank you for the teachers who presented. You're amazing. And nobody knows teaching better than people doing teaching, and if we can have them sharing their practice together in PLCs or as coaches and mentors, you know, just think about the possibilities. So, you know, it's just, I know how hard beginning teaching is, and teachers, we talked about support, and this is support, and it's terrific. So more of that would be great. I also want to say relationships that have developed between OEIB, OEA, COSA, we're all really thinking about how can we hit the targets on the achievement compacts. These were some examples, and I think to even grow those relationships more is very, very important. OSBA is critical to our work.
Thank you.
I just think of how far this is from my first day teaching 5th grade, 1987, where I was given the key and there's the science book, and I guess kids learn vertebrates in 5th grade. Far cry now with what we're hearing today and support for that. Just looking to answer the two questions, and I'll try to give you something a little bit different flavor. I think what everybody said in front of me is hitting it right on. First one's all about leadership And I mentioned the principal role and mentor because I want to go back toward looking at the school holistically, where teacher leadership's embedded at various levels, administrative, mid-management, central office. It's all a holistic team. So looking at it as educator, like our whole name of it, the educator network, including those other, the various roles people have. Second part of that, Hilda, we're having a lot of success with our hubs, our early hub work, our 11-14 work, and those are cross-sector professional development opportunities. So that's something I really want to emphasize, that we need to be having kindergarten teachers working with preschool teachers. We need to have high school teachers working with community college and college in joint PLCs and joint professional learning communities. The final question was what indicators? I put down the TEL survey. I'm glad you said that. I think it gives us a baseline. It can give us a pre and a post. If we're talking about quality ed network, we need a survey to quantify some of that data, and I think the TEL is the starting point. I'd like to see some data in 2016 on teacher retention. We talked about it a lot today. It's obviously a major area. And the final one is alignment to the regional achievement collaboratives. That's a major initiative for OEIB as far as an on-the-ground way to make change and reform. So how the professional development aligns to the goals of the RAC would be something I'd like to see.
That's a good one that I need to think more deeply about with Jonna and others. Thank you. Nicole.
So first of all, thank you for the presentations, and thanks for the structured opportunity to give comment. As a former school administrator and educator, I am so profoundly supportive of anything that allows teachers to be part of creating the solutions and really identifying the challenges. They have the absolute best insight, and I think anything we can do to support that leadership, and I think that piece as the network expands is incredibly important. I also feel like whatever we can do to support new teachers and really teachers throughout the profession on how to connect with other resources. Teachers so often feel isolated and feel that they have to come up with their own innovative solutions, if that is a food bank or a clothing closet, and there's so many other resources and partners in the community that do want to support, and sometimes the most difficult piece is that connection, and I know that looks very different in different communities. In 6 years, or actually in 2 years, what I would hope to see, and this doesn't just apply to this conversation, I think it really applies to many presentations that we've had, and I think I would just sort of frame it as, for me as an OEIB board member, I'm feeling a little tired of feeling like the equity police, and I feel like we're in a state that 38% of our kids are children of color, and our 0 to 5-year-old population has been majority minority since 2011. We know that 96% of our teachers are not people of color, and so we also know that the reason that we're having this conversation is really about having different outcomes with kids, and if we want to have different outcomes with kids, equity has to be a forefront in that conversation. There needs to be two major elements. One being how we're going to make our workforce reflect the children so that we do have better outcomes. And the other is, if this is really about supporting teachers to be successful, we need to provide the right supports to our white teachers who want to be positive allies in the classroom and have different, better outcomes with kids of color. And we need to support teachers to have different outcomes with boys and girls, because we have significant gender inequality issues with boys in our schools, and I didn't hear anything about that today, and it's probably an issue of time, but I really hope we hear more about that next time, and not just from this aspect, from every part of every conversation we have. So I know
I'm so excited, because that's an introduction to have me come back, bring members of the educator advisory group, and right now it's called the Minority Educator Advisory Group because of the Minority Educator Teacher Report, but one of their very first actions at their first meeting, which is about 22 individuals crossing over the entire state, is that they want to change the name of that. But that will be something that we'll be bringing back to the OEIB, and they are specifically monitoring the impact of 2 new sets of strategic investments around diversifying the workforce and some culturally responsive pedagogy and practice projects.
And just to keep talking, I'll behave myself, Mark. And I really appreciate that, but I really want to change our culture of OEIB and everything that we do in education to not have equity outcomes be a special subset of the conversation. I want it to be forefront in every conversation because that is how we'll have collectively different outcomes.
Great advice, thank you. Dr. Henry?
Wow, a lot of good stuff. I want to pick up from where my colleague just left off. And on your second bullet, fast forward to 2016, I would hope that we would lower the equity gap and for students, for teachers, and for administrators and other leaders. So that's kind of looking back at it. I started to reconceptualize some of what we're doing OEIB-wise here. And I was out at one of Superintendent Yvonne Curtis's schools about 2 years ago. And a 14-year-old came up to me and said, "How do I get your job?" And which I thought is pretty legitimate. She had the most beautiful braces. I figured that because I paid about $20,000 for my daughter. And one of the tasks in front of us is to build a structure for educational reform leadership on a statewide level. And I'm not sure we've completely conceptualized that. But I do want to reflect back in terms of features of professional networks that I've experienced. And I was very fortunate. In my second year of teaching, I was a part of the Urban Teacher Corps, and it sounds like a lot of the components, they are similar. And Dorothy Sharp made my life, and I still have homage to her. But what features have been important over the years are, first of all, to consider and build social capital in a pluralistic society. We talk a lot about achievement goals, and we talk a lot about kinds of little pieces of that. And I think we need some broader looks at that. It's been mentioned that we want to foster the development of teacher leaders. And all of the research I'm reading, and that could be slanted, I only had 32 doctoral students in last year. But all of recent research says that teacher leaders are important, whether they're in principal roles, building roles, other kinds of roles. And that means thinking about how we work with people in some different kinds of relationships. The third thing is we need to be deliberate about helping educators to become teacher leaders. And it's not just a scatter approach. I won't go back, but I had a conversation with a colleague of mine who's in the religion business. And he talked about how deliberate they were in terms of encouraging people who have leadership capacity to move to leadership in the organization. And one of the things about education that strikes me is we kind of leave that to happenstance. If you feel you've been blessed, you go and you study and you become a principal, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we as a group here need to be much more deliberate about saying to people who indicate and show signs of having leadership that this is something that we want to foster with you. I know it's done on a one-to-one basis, but we need to be collective about that. And finally, we need to connect with communities of color, and some of that was mentioned here. And one of the observational pieces is there are lots of different ways to connect with communities of color. And one of the least successful, I'll put it that way, is to consider that this is a kind of a missionary outreach. I hate to use that word, but kind of this is your expeditionary effort of the week. And that requires getting absorbed, immersed, and having a real dialogue back and forth with communities of color. And that's a different kind of operation than much of the ones we've done. But now let me pass on to my colleague here.
Okay. Well, I like the examples of the peer-to-peer mentoring and the teacher involvement we heard today. I think what's going to be important for us is trying to find out what the most effective things going on that we've heard, if we're going to scale up or implement this or even do a statewide network of teaching and learning. I think probably a survey sounds like probably one of the best ways to do that, at least short term. I mean, longer term might be teacher retention. I wouldn't want to go to student test scores. I think those are used for everything, and it's just not appropriate. But something like surveys of teachers, principals, what are they finding the most effective methods that are going on with these networks and most useful, and then looking at teacher retention based on that, and even professional development growth based on that. And I think there's some things maybe we could be applying this to, and maybe they already are, and it just wasn't in the presentations today when you have enough time to get to, but an idea is maybe the implementation of Common Core standards that are running into some problems in other states. This might be a good vehicle for that, and maybe it is being used for that. Yeah, okay. And another one, obviously, we were talking in a previous subcommittee meeting today about aligning standards with high schools and colleges. This seems like the natural branch of the high schools to be talking with the college faculty on those terms.
Thank you so very, very much. And I just want to ask if we could give a round of applause to all of the folks who were here.
Thank you. We're going to make just a change to the agenda because we're ahead of time, but yet we have a special presentation. So at 3:20, 3:35, we're going to hold tight that that's the break time because we have a presentation during that. So what we're going to do is we're going to skip right down to the Achievement Compact with 35 minutes here. So Peter, you are up to talk about the recommendations for the Achievement Compact.
But I want to be able to get to the webpage to open up or not. If we can't, we can't. Color to the board, black and white to the agency peoples, and this one black and white to everybody. That's fine. If you can't, you can't. I just didn't. I'm sorry. I made it today and I didn't know it was going to be red. So we're all good. You sure? Yep. Okay. Yep.
Well, I thought.
Okay.
It's free instead of, and by the way, it's their practices. So these wrap here. So these practices really need.
Mr. Chair, members of the OEIB board, for the record, my name is Peter Tromba, the Research and Policy Director for OEIB. The topic of today's presentation is the Achievement Compact report and then some recommendations that are contained within the report for your consideration. You have two handouts that have come to you. One of them is actually a copy of the Achievement Compact report. The second is an activity that we're going to do together at the conclusion of my presentation regarding goal setting. I know as a former teacher, it's terrible to hand out handouts, especially one with pretty colors on it before you start talking, but I opted to do that rather than interrupt the report. But we will get to the pretty colored handout at the end, so thanks for your attention. First off, I do want to credit the fact that most of the work that led to this report was done by other folks, not me. David Edwards, who was my predecessor in this position, compiled all of the evidentiary information that went into the report as a result of dozens of interviews that he conducted with folks throughout our system. Also, Chief Education Officer Golden and Chief of Staff Grubbs did a lot of work with David Edwards to fashion a final copy of the report. I was lucky enough to receive it at the very conclusion, do a little bit of work on making it look a teeny bit prettier, and then I get to present it today. So a lot of, if you do approve of it, a lot of the reflected glory for that goes to other folks. The overview, I'm going to go over the report fairly quickly. There's some key things I want to point out that are in the report, but this has been up on our website now for quite a while. It's something that you can refer to by checking it out on the website or refer to the written copy. I want to spend as much time as possible on the recommendations that are listed here, and then even more specifically, some of the recommendations require some board action, which, assuming that you agree with that, we would get started on some rulemaking and rule changing over the next couple meetings. And I'll just say generally that I'm open to questions at any point along the way in the process, so that's fine. If you want to interrupt me and do that, that's great. When you look at the Achievement Compact report, the first thing I think we would need to say is, why did we do it? What was the subject and the purpose of it? I think good practice would be, whether or not the Achievement Compacts were received positively or negatively, that we would be going out to the field to ask, how's it going? But to be honest, we knew ahead of time, before we even began this report, that there was some upset in the field at all levels, K-12, ESD, community college, and university, regarding the Achievement Compacts. There were questions that were out there were concerns that were out there, and it was critical for us, because of that, to get on interviewing and finding out what was going on. So the subject is the Achievement Compacts. The purpose is to find out how they're working, but even more specifically, the purpose is to see whether or not there needs to be some course correction pronto. And I believe, as you'll see, there were. With respect to high-level summary of this report, when you look in the report, there's an introduction, and then there's a really, really important section that goes over, why did we do Achievement Compacts in the first place? What were some of our guiding ideas that led us to come up with another system of communication between institutions and districts and someone up at the state? Because if you're from a school district, and I was until very recently, you might naively ask, aren't we already reporting enough stuff? Don't we already give enough stuff to ODE or to the feds or whatever? Why is there something else out there? And the fact is that before I came to the OEIB, that's exactly what I would have been asking. And this is an issue that we're going to engage in at some depth in a couple of minutes. There's confusion out there about why we did it in the first place. But actually, when you look at the report, you'll see, and if you go back to 2011 and 2012 when all this was discussed, there were some great reasons to have Achievement Compacts. They had to do with a handshake with institutions. They had to do with equity and target setting around equity. They had to do with trying to leverage collective accountability in different areas of our state towards these achievement metrics. They had to do with really good metrics in the first place, research-based, evidence-based metrics that we could all stand behind as a state. Notwithstanding the fact that these were all really, really good ideas, what we found when we did the report was there was confusion out there. And among the final conclusions of the report, 2 of them have to do with confusions about OEIB and Achievement Compacts. 2 of the conclusions had to do with the Achievement Compacts metrics and process. And the final conclusion of the report was that in some cases, it's making a huge difference to have Achievement Compacts in place. So again, to reiterate that, we saw confusion about OEIB, confusion about Achievement Compacts. We saw that we needed to work on the metrics, we needed to work on the process. But we also saw, and it's really important to state this, we also saw that we were getting traction in certain districts, and in certain areas it was making a great difference. Because I want to underline that, because one of the things that I've heard in the brief time that I've been involved in the Achievement Compacts is, Peter, are we just going to get rid of them? Is it too much of a headache? Is it too much of a recapitulation of what's always been done? Should we just dump them? And the fact is that that would be, first off, it would be letting go of all the great reasons that we did it in the first place, but it would be ignoring all of the places where this is already making a real difference. And the last thing that we want to do is to stop the fledgling efforts that are making a difference right when they're getting off the ground. And that's the third bullet, areas of success. We do see places around the state, as evidenced by, for instance, the focus on attendance, and the fact that we have, by virtue of an Achievement Compact metric around attendance, received individual district focus on attendance and chronic non-attendance, and also press around attendance and chronic non-attendance. That's really a success area that we can build on. The last thing that's in the report are guidelines for moving forward, and there's a set of recommendations that I'm going to categorize in 3 areas. One of it is about restarting and rebranding. We right now need to rebrand Achievement Compacts, and I'll go into that to some degree, but I've already been out in some community forums talking about this, and folks do really believe we need to give it another chance. We need to focus on the early wins around Achievement Compacts, and also focus on how achievement compacts add value to the work in districts, community colleges, ESDs, and public universities. So, what are our recommendations as a result of this? And how are we going to move forward with those recommendations? When we did the recommendations in the Achievement Compact report, we directly took those recommendations to a large degree from what we heard in the interviews and then what we heard from staff members and others who were involved in them. And for your consideration today, we've presented these recommendations in 3 categories. One category are recommendations that are going to be accomplished essentially by our staff or the staff of our partner agencies. There's a second set of recommendations that have to do with alignment, and there's a third set of recommendations that have to do with board actions or referrals to other boards like the HEC or the Early Learning Commission. Early Learning Council. Every time I do that, I'm sorry about that. So the first things are, what are the OEIB staff activities that come as a result of this report? The first one is timely and targeted feedback. We have so far at the OEIB not been timely or targeted with respect to the feedback that we give to districts, ESDs, community colleges, and universities. That has to change. When these come in, we must respond promptly to the districts that have done all that work, community colleges, universities, and ESDs. And we are working right now to put together that calendar so that occurs. A second activity that we need to do, that we will, is give feedback regarding statewide patterns in terms of goal setting and accomplishment of our goals. I'll tell you just initially, and I'm not going to share this right now because we're not prepared to share it in a comprehensive fashion, but there are some interesting statewide patterns that emerged even the first couple of years with regard to goal setting. And in particular, I'll call out, because it has to do with disaggregated data and equity goals, that it's very clear in looking at the way that we're setting goals around the state, that at K-12 we feel a higher degree of efficacy with regard to closing the achievement gap in reading as compared to math. So what you'll see, and I assume that we'll do this in subsequent reports, but what you'll see, what I saw, is that at math at the 8th grade, we envision that the achievement gap is more persistent or pernicious and hard to close than we believe at reading at 3rd grade. And I take that to be an expression of the fact that we understand more about how to close the achievement gap in reading than we do about how to close the achievement gap in math, because frankly we know more about reading instruction in 3rd grade than we know about math instruction in 8th grade. And so that analysis of the goals that we set does lead us to certain conclusions about what we might do. And that's the kind of thing we need to produce back to the field in terms of a value add. Another OEIB staff activity is communication strategy. We are working with Kristen Gimbel in our office on communicating more effectively about the achievement compacts, and it's part of her comprehensive strategy about communication. A fourth staff activity is support of regional strategies like the hubs or the RACs with respect to the achievement compacts. And I can go into some detail about this later. For instance, there's been a lot of discussion about when a RAC convenes and we have 5 or 6 school districts and we have the community college, we have the university in the room, how do we use the achievement compacts to help drive our discussion? And how do we collectively support each other's making our goals with respect to our achievement compacts? I think there's a lot of ways that those can work together, and that's something that we will pursue. Another staff activity is coordinated research and policy work. The most important research and policy work that we can be doing at the OEIB is work around the achievement compact metrics. We chose the metrics because they're evidence and research based. Well, a question might come up, how do the strategic investments move the dial on the metrics? We just saw that with regard to the network. That's what we should be doing. Instead of adding more metrics, we should be researching and looking at policy regarding the metrics that the districts are already focusing on. And it's easy, honestly, to add more metrics because every year there's a little bit more research that might suggest another metric. If we don't stick to the metrics that are in the compact over time, we won't get traction. So coordinated research policy around those metrics. And as Dr. Mulvihill already mentioned, this is something that we have already achieved, which is a technical manual and definitions with respect to the achievement compacts. Recommendations for the board. There's 2 recommendations about timeline. And the way this came out in PowerPoint, I apologize for, I missed a carriage return. So there are actually 2 recommendations in here. One has to do with the length of goals, 3, 4, or 5 years. And a second recommendation, this should be a new line, has to do with Achievement Compact Advisory Committee recommendations for community college and the date where they need to do those. So those are 2 specific administrative rules that we are likely to be asking for some revision. One around the length of the goal and one around a process goal for community colleges. And we're going to get into that in some detail in a minute. The second board action has to do with recommendations linked to investments and compact outcomes, and that would come through the Outcomes and Investments Subcommittee. We also were going to recommend collaborations between, one other recommendation had to do with making it easier for school districts and the public to understand the Achievement Compact metrics and how they relate to the report card. So last year and the year before that, the metrics on the Achievement Compact were not the same as the metrics on the report card. And that caused unnecessary confusion for all of us. So another thing that we already have done with respect to collaboration is working very closely with the ODE. All of the metrics on the Achievement Compact except for one, and I'll talk about that on the next slide, all of them are identical to what's on the report card. And that's great work. Happy to have had that take place, and I think it's going to help us moving forward. Another area of collaboration is between the OEIB, the Early Learning Council, and the HEC to make sure that our missions are aligned with respect to the Achievement Compact. Another area of collaboration is with the Regional Achievement Collaboratives and the hubs. And then finally, a final area is that we are recommending that the OEIB refer to the HEC 2 particular areas in their achievement compacts to continue to deliberate. One, which is evaluating the metrics for the community college and the 4-year public universities. And a second is to consider student surveys to be a new metric that would be considered to really flesh out some of the complexities that are not captured in the current metric with respect to the different missions that are followed especially at the community college level. So I'm going to actually go back to this slide and see whether there are any questions, because when I get to the next slide, it's very, very specific. With respect to these recommendations, there's a couple slides worth. One was our staff activities, one which had to do with board action, and one which had to do with collaboration. I'm wondering if there are any specific questions about those, because I'm about to go into way more depth, and I wanted to make sure that we had a chance to talk about these. Dr. Henry?
Peter, a lot of fantastic work. I'm wondering, and you're great at pulling out the metrics, I'm wondering about the processes involved. And I look over there at Whitney because when we first did achievement compacts in terms of our ESA waiver, one of the questions I asked was that, where are the teeth? How do we get to doing something rather that moves beyond polite handshakes with each other? Because I wasn't really happy with what we've done with polite handshakes with each other. So I'm going to dive in and ask you, do we know, first of all, because you want to make some recommendations, do we know that we have the right metrics? Do we know that we have the right processes to get to a discussion of whether or not those are the right metrics for each institution. And I want to pick on the community colleges for just a second, because they get picked on a lot. And I want to, sure, why not? And I want to say that we have a system of community colleges where we ask community colleges for both success and access in higher education. As we look at the metrics, I'm not sure that's what we've looked, success and access we've asked for 45 years. When I look at the metrics, I'm not sure those are the metrics that lead us to success and access. They lead us to one definition of success and access, but I'm not sure that they take us there. So my question to you is, given a lot of metrics, there are lots of questions for you, but my question is, do we have the right metrics? Are the discussions in the institutions about whether these metrics are both the right ones and how we move to them happening? And what should be our role when institutions, districts, etc., are not living up to what they said they were going to do? And we've got 3 hours, don't we?
Thank you for the question, Chair Mulvihill, members of the board, Dr. Henry. First off, and I'm remiss for not doing this earlier on, and maybe it's a little bit of a bird walk, but I do want to make sure I differentiate the purpose of the achievement compacts versus the purpose of an accountability framework that might come out of Oregon Department of Education or the HEC or State Board of Ed or something like that. So, and honestly, as a person at the school district until I got up here, this was not a distinction I really understood, but it is a distinction with meaning, I think. An accountability framework, such as we use with the definition of focus and priority schools or something like that with a school report card, is based on the notion that we can measure an amount of adequate yearly progress for an institution, a student, a system, or what have you, using something called predictive analytics. So we look at where someone is, a student is, a school is, or what have you, and we predict, given your demographics, given your funding, where should you be able to get next year? What's adequate? And then you draw a confidence interval around that and say, well, if you're a little bit low or if you're a little bit high, that's fine. But you need to be getting into some range. And if a school persistently, or a student persistently doesn't meet that, then we need some kind of intervention. And it's the basis of how good instruction works. It's response to intervention, whether it's a school or a kid. This is where you should be, and if you don't get there with adequate intervention, we need to do more. And so an accountability framework for our state K-12 or for community college or for universities has to do with predicting where they should be, and if they're not there on a consistent basis, doing something. And typically what states do and what our state would do is say, well, we give you more support and we give you more support. If you still don't make it after that, then maybe we need to take more of a direction to drive in one way or the other. And I think that there's going to be ongoing work in all levels of Oregon as a result of the letter that Dr. Golden has sent out to do that exact kind of work around prediction. And I believe it's necessary just the way it would be for a child. However, when you look at goal setting and performance, there is another realm and there is another domain about goal setting. And it has to do with stretch goals, with trajectory towards the future, and it has to do with aspiration. And that's what the handout that we're going to talk a little bit about, but I think it's very present because of your question. And the analogy that I've tried to use has to do with President Kennedy, 1960, and the question of when are we going to get to the moon? And what was thrown out that year was, instead of something predictive about what we're going to do in 1961, 62, 63, 64, what that leader said was, in 10 years we need to get to the moon. And you guys figure it, you guys and ladies and everybody else at NASA or wherever, you figure it out. And what happened in our country as a result of that is some extraordinary things took place that the predictive analytical folks at NASA would never have gone on record as saying you could ever do. But we got to the moon in 9 years rather than 10. And in researching this phenomena around goal setting, predictive versus aspirational, there are really two separate domains. Aspirational goal setting gets a collaborative effort together, like what you see in the movies, or what you see in Sister Act, or what you see where in Blues Brothers, or whatever, where we got to, in the Muppets movie, we got to save this thing.
I love your analogy.
Yeah. How are we going to raise the money to save this? And all the smart people with the propeller heads would say, no, you never can do it, but yet it occurs. And if you study what draws alignment of forces together, it's not by prediction, it's by this call to action. It's what 40-40-20 is all about. And it's what achievement compacts were supposed to be all about too. And I think one of the things that handicapped achievement compacts from day one was setting goals 1 year in the future. Because if you ask me in Eugene School District where I used to work, set the goals 1 year in the future, and I have the chance to talk to the big thinkers in the room or talk to the analytical people in the room, I'm going to talk to the analytical people. Tell me about the cohort of second graders coming up in Eugene. Tell me where we could get. Tell me the confidence interval. We'll pick a high number, and that's what we're going to send back to OEIB. And that's what you saw across the state. Nobody set aspirational goals, because who would in 1 year? And that's why one of our recommendations is to amend the language that has to do in the OAR with how far we set the goal in the future, to actually ask for a goal that's 3 or 4 or 5 years in the future. And I guess then the question is, well, what do we do around accountability around 5-year goals? And I think that's a discussion that we're going to need to have. But we would not be recommending 3 or 4 or 5-year goals without also recommending that the agencies involved have an accountability framework. And I think the two things work together, and we're going to find out exactly how. I don't know what NASA did in 1963 when they hadn't yet started to have the real curve towards the future. And they were still behind Sputnik, and they were still behind everything else. Or not Sputnik, because that was 57. I'm not sure what they did at NASA to make that happen. I think it'd be really interesting to study. But clearly those two things were both happening at once. You also asked the question whether or not we have the right metrics. We do. All of the research that went into these in 2012 are just as true as it was today. Could we find some additional metrics in some of these areas? Probably. I think over time we might. But the 3rd grade metric, the 6th grade metric, the 9th grade metric, and the 12th grade metric are the right ones. We should be tracking graduation and all the others. And I think there's been some discussion about why we inserted the math metrics into it. And I think there's some discussion about maybe pulling them out and just keeping them in the report card and not having them in the achievement compact. But I wouldn't recommend for a second changing the metrics that we have at K-12. But you also asked another question about the metrics at higher ed. Our recommendation is we ask the HEC to look at those again, because they're not based as much on research. And I think especially given the community college missions that they have about associate's degrees and all the other missions that they have, it's a very complex milieu. And I think it'd be important for HEC to reconsider those metrics. And I think that answers the question about community colleges as well.
Chairman, Nancy Golden warned me that Peter was pretty good. Because I cornered her and asked her the same question last month. And I think the response is, thank you. Thank you.
Yvonne, comment?
So one is a comment, and thank you for that discussion about predictive versus aspirational. You put language to what I've been trying to say even in my district. And if we don't capture the importance of both of those at every level and the relationship between, which I'm really looking forward to learning from you how to do that so I can go do that in my district. The other thing I wanted to call out, and I think you're going to tell us more about, but I love this coordinated research on the metrics and the policies as well as the strategic investments. I think that's really hopeful. I know it's very complicated. I know there's many variables there, but I think that you all together are positioning OEIB to sort of teach us all how to do that by calling that out and saying that that's what we're going to do. So I look forward to learning more about that.
We doing okay?
We're doing okay.
How much time?
Here's what we're going to do.
Okay.
Why don't you go and, hang on just one second. Let's go in 5 more minutes.
Okay.
Okay?
then we'll do that break, because we're timed around that. Then we're going to come back and finish the aspirational goal.
Perfect.
Dave, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just maybe you can comment on this. I mean, if the report card for schools and the achievement compact are so similar, and I'm not saying throw out the achievement, don't everybody in the room freak out. I'm not saying throw out the achievement compact for schools right now and start a whole new thing again. But I'm thinking if they're so similar and there's not a lot of difference, what is the reason for that? Or maybe it's something as we revisit the post-secondary compacts, and I think look at them more as a goal-setting thing than a report card. I think that was part of the problem with the post-secondary ones, is they were report cards, and it was never really agreed on how we were going to get there or anything. It was just going to be numbers to report, and hopefully in a positive way. I think it was a lot of people's input, but they weren't really any way connected other than that. But it just gets me to thinking, what is there a difference in, I mean, even if they are using the same or very similar metrics to a school report card, is there a difference in how they're used as for the K through 12 as an achievement compact rather than a school report card?
Absolutely. So first off, the report cards are based on schools, and the achievement compact is districts. Now, at community college and public universities, it's the same locus that we're measuring. So I think maybe it's a more interesting question there, how you might delve into it, how a university might use that compact with departments. One thing Executive Director Ken and I heard last week was in how in California, metrics that are being used at an institutional level then trickle down into to deans of individual colleges within a university. So I think it's different there. But with respect to K-12, the purpose of the Achievement Compact is to help galvanize a community or a RAC or a city towards things like graduation, and to get everybody's collective input into what our goals are and how we're going to get there. The measure on the report card is how an individual school is moving along that pathway. I think by changing this from a 1 year to a 3 or 4 year, that'll even be more clearly differentiated. But nevertheless, where you should see this discussion coming up in a school district around Achievement Compact is at a budget committee meeting and a board meeting. And where you should see the report card being discussed is at a site council meeting or a staff meeting at a school. So it has to do with different audiences, different scope, different areas of responsibility. What a budget committee does in terms of strategic planning versus what a school and a principal does is really, really different. And that's why they also should be different. The fact that the same metrics are used, I think, is a real win for a district's alignment purposes. So we don't have two definitions for graduation rate, or two definitions about what is a 9th grade on track measure. Does that work?
Yeah,
okay.
thank you.
So one thing I did say all the measures are aligned, and I did say there was one that are not aligned. Here's the one that's not aligned. OEIB, when you came up with the achievement compacts, came up with something called college credits earned in high school. And what you came up with was based on research, which had to do with 9+ college credits earned at high school. And what nobody was thinking of at the time probably was the fact that A, different colleges give different numbers of credits if they're semester or quarter hour based. And also, plenty of kids take IB classes and AP classes. They take college level courses. They would earn college credit, but their particular university doesn't give them the credit. So we had institutions at K-12 tracking kids down, calling them up over the summer and saying, we know you got a 5 on the AP test, but how many credits did Stanford give you? How many credits did U of O give you? Oh, I haven't gotten the admission yet. And there's such complexity to it. And so this resonated really, really well with K-12. Instead of measuring college credits earned, we're going to measure college level courses passed in high school. And instead, 9 was the number because most college credit courses give you 3 credits. But it really meant 3 courses. And so what we've told the districts now is it's 3 courses at the college level earned. And we've heard a lot of yays about that from folks who do data reporting back in K-12, because this is trivial to measure versus calling everybody all summer about how many college credits they got. All they have to do is use their student information system. Yes?
I agree, it's herding cats, because you cannot find where those kids are.
Yeah.
That'd be much easier data point. Okay, we have a special presentation right after the break, and I want to, and Peter, we're just going to come right back, okay?
Okay, and if you have
Right where
time during
you
the
are.
break, just look at that handout with the pretty colors, because that's what we'll do at the end.
Right, so we're going to have you come right back.
Okay.
We're going to take a 15-minute break. And we're going to have the Eastern Promise RFP recipients come up, and then when everybody comes back right at 3:35, we will have a little presentation. So, take a well-earned break. Okay, we have a special announcement that Nancy and Whitney are going to lead involving the Eastern Promise RFP scale-up, and we have some folks here. So, Nancy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. This is a moment of celebration, and I just want to take us back to one of the strategies of the OEIB, which is that we try to find best practices that are happening anywhere in the state, and then we support that best practice, and then we think about, and we watch it, and we study it, and we learn from it that can lead to additional policy, and then we say, how do we scale it up across the state? So with the Eastern Promise, I think we all know that, and it's just great you're sitting next to me, because I know this had a lot to do with your leadership, but people in Eastern Oregon, and that was Eastern Oregon University, Blue Mountain Community College, Intermountain, ESD, and 33 school districts have substantially increased how many college credits students get in high school. I mean, and they have what we call busted barriers all along the way to make sure students, many students who never thought they would go to college, who never really saw themselves as having access to college, learned very quickly that this community was going to make it happen, and make it happen for all students. So we saw that as a really great practice, and we decided as one of our strategic investments that we wanted to have an Eastern Promise Collaborative Model grant. And we had extraordinary applications. I mean, I think, where is Hilda? Hilda, I guess during the time of seeing the application, said, put her hand up like bull, meaning every one of these really hit the mark on trying to do what we wanted to do, which is access for college for all of our students. So after, I guess, hard deliberation, we are going to present 3 grants today, and I think what's important to know about these replication grants, that in all cases there's partnerships with school districts, ESDs, community college, and public or private post-secondary institutions serving at least 10,000 students. So what we know is the other thing they're really going to work on is really how are we able to get high school credit, college credit in high school. In addition to that, how do we really look at developmental education and making sure we're either working in the high school around getting students the skills to be successful in college, or we work on that in the first 2 years in college. So I think you would be proud to know not only have they looked at what you've done, but they've even taken it to the next level in some cases, and that's what this is all about. So I am going to let Mark say a few words, and then with that, we're going to bring up some people, and we're going to make an announcement, and we're going to give some very big checks. So, Mark.
That's pretty cool. Before I say anything, I just want to note that Treasure Valley Community College has also been a key player to our effort as well. This is obviously a dream come true, where you kind of see your baby graduate in some ways. We've been at this in our region, some of us, over 5 to 10 years. And it started, like many places are, with original conversations of how can we improve dual credit, how can we deal with the master's degree issue, is what the starting conversation was. And to see it like it is today, where the energy that was created and the excitement created around the state for a tangible win for OEIB, and that we were a part of that, is pretty doggone satisfying.
It makes you feel pretty doggone good. We haven't done anything in our region that other people haven't done, except we really, really showed tremendous perseverance and collaboration. And we have kept our eye on it, and we haven't quit. And we haven't done the usual ed reform that when we get tired, we start arguing with each other, we quit and go back to our silos. We refuse to do that. Subsequently, the flywheel just started going and going and going and moving forward. We know how ed reform works. The question is, are we going to stick to it? Are we going to put our general fund into it? Are we going to make it work? So what I'm thrilled with today, obviously, is the sheer volume of interest and passion for this project in this RFP. And I'm thrilled with these 3 winners because they really, really have it going on. And we're going to learn a lot from them.
Great, so I'm going to come up, we're going to give some big checks, and I'm going to announce who our winners are, and then I'll ask them to come up. And after we give all the checks, because, give me the money first, right? Then I'm going to ask each of you just to talk a little bit about your project. So we're going to start with Willamette ESD for the Mid-Willamette Valley Promise. Do we have some people here from the Willamette ESD for the Mid-Willamette Valley Promise?
Follow up.
Well, you'll come up, then we'll talk, and we're giving you a check for $500,000. You're going to take it?
You gotta take it.
I think you're going to take it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Here, we'll let you hold it. Let you hold it.
Okay.
Yeah, get Mark in this.
Yeah, come on.
We're threatening to clone him anyhow.
Let's wait for Mark. Are you folks ready to just talk a little bit about it? Yeah. Thank you so much. All right. Okay, let's hear a little bit about your project.
All right, thank you. So, receiving mine.
That'd be great, because we've got some people on the telephone.
Chair Mulvihill, members of the board, my name is Dave Novotny, Superintendent of the Willamette Education Service District, and it is truly a pleasure to be here this afternoon, representing 20 school districts in Marion, Polk, and Yamhill counties, serving over 77,000 students. Other partners in this collaborative effort would be our organization, Chemeketa Community College, Western Oregon University, Corbin University, Oregon Institute of Technology, and the South Metro Salem STEM Hub. We are ecstatic about moving in this direction. Over the last couple of years, we have been modeling many of the aspects of the Eastern Promise, but they've been very small efforts, and we've been anxious to really move this effort forward. This money is going to allow us to create systems that's going to have a lasting impact on students in our area for a very, very long time. We anticipate that in the best case scenario, after this first year when systems are in place, we'll have many of our students in the 3-county area achieving up to 45 credits of college credit while still in high school. That would equate to the Oregon Transfer Module. And a lot of our students will also be getting career and technical education college courses while in high school as well. The thing that we're very pleased with is there is a strong desire and emphasis on creating a college-going, career-going culture in the high schools in our region. And that's going to be infused all the way down to the 5th grade level. And our professional learning communities will even include a group of high school, middle school counselors working with post-secondary counselors to really focus on that college and career-going culture. So in short, because I know we don't have very much time, I'd like to thank you very much on behalf of all of our members for this generous grant. And we would like to acknowledge the colleagues in the Eastern Promise who have been visionaries, and we really appreciate the work that you've done, and also the opportunity that the OEIB has given us to replicate this wonderful program. Thank you.
Next, we'd like Portland Community College for the Oregon Metro Connects All Students to College Consortium. For anyone from that collaborative to come up. And we have a check for $445,000 for this group.
Yay.
Yes, good. And we'll ask for a speaker after to tell us a little bit about your.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so do we have a speaker?
Yes, you do.
Great.
Good afternoon. I'm Cheryl Scott, and I'm the Interim Dean of Instruction at the Rock Creek campus at Portland Community College, and that campus is in Washington County. And I'm very pleased to accept this today. Thank you for the check. We had no idea we were going home with a real check today. So, first off, I know.
We hope they'll get it. Just
Try cashing that, let me know how it goes.
I've seen, yes, in my years, I've seen more interesting checks that I was able to cash, so we'll see. So I also wanted to introduce my colleagues that are here today. And so Vanessa Wood is the grant writer from Portland Community College and our interim director. And then we have Bonnie, I'm sorry.
Hester.
Hester, sorry, I met Bonnie today, who also worked on this from the grants office at Portland Community College. And then joining us as one of our team members is Portland State University's Saquant Jha. And we appreciate all three of you coming today as well. So I wanted to let you know that the pieces of this grant that really excite us are our ability to expand the dual credit offerings. It's something we've been kind of working on our own and haven't made as much traction as we'd like to, so this is really going to help, so thank you. Also to create the degree transfer maps. Another point is the professional learning communities that we're looking forward to. The college-going culture definitely is important to us. And the regional resource network. All of those are very important to us, and the partners that we have working with us will be, of course, ourselves, Portland Community College, Portland State University, the, Mount Hood Community College, I'm trying to remember all these off the top of my head, Multnomah ESD, there's 9 school districts, and those are both in Multnomah County and in Washington County. So after all of these years of hearing about Eastern Promise and of the work that you are doing over there, I'm so pleased that we'll be able to build on that work in our region. So thank you very much.
The last one's on the phone? Yeah. Okay, so we're just going to shove that check, right?
Let's take, yeah.
Okay, High Desert ESD for the Central Oregon Cascade commitment, and that's $450,000 too. And we will bring the check up.
Could you put the phone right in front of the check there and take a picture?
I totally am going to do that, Paul, and I'll send it to you.
We'll take a picture.
Great. This is Paul Andrews. I'm the Deputy Superintendent of High Desert ESD, and with me is Julie Guest-Newsom, who is Instructional Dean for Oregon State University Cascades. And first of all, thank you very much. We are honored and very grateful for having been awarded this. We are Cascades Commitment, as we've called ourselves for almost 2 years now, is made up of OSU Cascade, Central Oregon Community College, High Desert ESD, and 6 school districts, including Ben Lapine, Redmond, Crook County, Sisters, Culver, and Jefferson County School District, which is about 33,000 students. We have, for the past 18 months to 2 years, been focusing on ensuring that no matter where a student goes to high school in Central Oregon, they will for sure have access to 5 specific classes, and we call that our core Cascades commitment. And those are Writing 121, 122, Math 111, Speech 111, and Psych 101. And the reason we have focused on those, at least initially, is that they're all foundational classes that can lead either to an AAS or to an AAOT that would then allow someone to continue their 4-year degree. So what we're planning on using these dollars for is to build up our PLCs that have already been started, at least in concept, between our high school teachers and our higher ed folks, providing more training through that process rather than that major obstacle that we've all been running into of can the teachers be under the community college and not have a master's degree in the content area. We're working around that and really appreciate the groundbreaking work that Eastern Promise has done in that to make that a whole lot easier for us. We're looking at capacity building and just increasing a general college-going culture. So thank you to the OEIB, thank you to Eastern Promise for leading the way for us here, and we wish we could be there. With 20 hours notice, it was a little hard to get many of us over the mountains for a 2.5-hour drive one way, so we really appreciate you accommodating us this way.
Okay, let's give him a hand.
Will we email a photo?
I will. I'll send them
Okay,
a photo
great.
right now.
Thanks, Mark.
I'll bring you the big check sometime, Paul.
Whitney's got the check, Paul.
Thank you.
Peter, you want to, oh, you're back up. Okay, go ahead.
Mark is meeting with a reporter for a little bit.
Okay,
So if you want to just go ahead, that'd be great.
so members of the board and absent chair, just to continue on with where we were, we are proposing, the staff is proposing the recommendations that we change the achievement compact process to allow districts to be more aspirational in their goal setting by having, instead of a 1-year goal, a 3 or 4 or 5-year goal. And so what I've provided for you is a little handout, and I'd like to do just a little bit of processing and engagement with the board. This is not the last or only time that you would have a chance to weigh in. The actual process of setting rules will enable us to have more discussion about the actual administrative rule. But I thought it would be helpful to first of all give you 2 graphics. So one of the graphics is a predictive goal. It shows you how you might predict a goal just based on a trajectory from the past. And the second box is an aspirational goal. And it shows there how you might look into the future and a trajectory for the future, like going to the moon, and how that might result in a different goal. And the real key question for us is, what is the right interval to pick for districts, community colleges, universities, and ESDs in terms of how far in the future? I've been doing reading and research on this, and to be honest, there's not a lot of really salient research on this specific topic regarding how far, except to say that unrealistic goals do not help. So goals that are just aspirational, not based on anything in reality, are useless and are laughed at. And goals that are not a stretch don't have the catalytic effect that aspirational goals should have. So it's somewhere between what we can predict and what's possible is where we should be looking in terms of setting our goal. And it seems that in talking to a number of people in the education field, 4 years has been resonating with a lot of folks. So we put up here 3, 4, and 5 years. And what I'd like you to do is we're going to just reflect for just a minute, and then I'm going to see if any board members are willing to talk about, in your own area of expertise, whether it's working at a university, whether it's selling cars, whatever it might be, what experience have you had with aspirational goal setting? And when you saw it work, what was the interval in the future? Was it 3, 4, 5 years out? Was it farther? Was it shorter? And I'd like to engage into a little discussion about that. So I'll just stop talking for a minute, look at this sheet, maybe make a couple of notes on what goal area it was, what was your aspirational goal, how far was it in the future, and then we'll see if we can generate a little bit of discussion on it. I'll give you 60 seconds to just think.
Madam Chair, just a quick clarification, and this may involve Whitney and Rob. We've got an ESA waiver, and this has been a part of it. Do we have a commitment? One of the reasons we did a year was because we were able to get that approved through negotiations and magic. And so, Rob, Whitney, do we still have that same obligation? And are we talking about a different goal than our aspirational goal? Because if we are, then that's okay.
Yes.
But I just want to clarify that.
No, that's a wonderful question, and it sort of, it dovetails with the question you asked earlier, which is, well, if everything's in the Achievement Compact, then why do we have a report card? And while all the metrics but one of the Achievement Compact are in the report card does contain a growth model, a system of looking at individual data on individual students' test scores across a set of years and figuring out this sort of growth. I'm not speaking articulately about it, but it has this growth model built in that helps us differentiate between the performance of different buildings. And in the process of the waiver and refining the waiver, the piece that the feds really clung to for our waiver was that within this growth model, there is a target or an annual measurable objective that is built in that is set to sort of bring our state up to our 40-40-20 goal. So it tracks with what we're talking about here, but is much more mechanized and routinized and built within that growth model formula that we have for this state. And so because of that, I think the Achievement Compact is something they were really interested in, inspired by, but our approval was not hung up on having a year-to-year goal-setting process, since we have this new report card that really meets the needs of the federal system.
So if we're going to get a person on the moon in 1 year as opposed to 5 years, it's still okay. I just didn't want us to walk off into that.
No, I appreciate that, yeah.
Thank you.
And hopefully that gave an opportunity, that QA, for folks to do a little bit of reflecting on goals. I'm wondering, is there any, Yvonne?
So I'll take a stab at it. First, I'm going to say in education, whenever we have set aspirational goals, I think it's been really hard for us to identify metrics that stayed the same, or we had enough understanding about, or that we had consensus among all levels within the organization that we could even measure that accurately, and that it was the right thing we were looking at and all that kind of stuff. However, I will say that I think, especially going forward, given the research you're talking about, to link some of these things, 4 years makes sense. An example I was going to use in Forest Grove, that actually was there before I even got there, and that was to increase graduation between our, to close the achievement gap and to increase the graduation rate, and I think it was like something like 20%. And what I noticed about aspirational goals is sometimes you actually achieve higher, and sometimes you don't quite get there. But my experience has been that you get there, you get much farther than you would have gone if you had just this sort of trajectory and fear of hammer. You know, what's going to happen to me if I get too aspirational and I don't meet it? I think that's one kind of idea that's floating out there. So I just think 4 years sounds great in terms of looking at especially graduation rate. So if I'm at the high school and I want to increase graduation rate, and I decide now, I can start working by looking down into middle school, working with the middle school principal and saying, what could I do over the transition and to gear up and have enough time to actually feel like I can have some control of changing things quick enough to do that. And in order for us, I think most of you know, because you know something about public education, but there are only certain times you can gear up and get ready to change, and there are only certain times you can make some change, because all the rest of the time our teachers are working with students, and they're the ones that are actually going to make the change and make the difference. So if we don't have enough time to plan out, do that intentionally, plan how it fits in with our structures and feels reasonable to our staff, we don't have hope of getting there. And so that gives a little more window for doing that intentional planning.
Thank you.
Okay, Dick.
You know, I'm in the automotive business, and I happen to know Norm Miller, who's Interstate Battery. Of course, he's in NASCAR also. But Interstate Battery's mission statement says that every car in America will have an interstate battery. Now, of course, that's impossible. But he has sold his his philosophy to all of his employees throughout the United States that they act on each car sale or each battery sale as if it is the one that will push them over the top to every consumer that's in the area to their big aspirational goal. Bring it down to home to have a goal, because I'm in the car business. You would go day to day on what your market share is against your different products, but you would also have an aspirational goal of everyone in your market area would be driving your product. Of course, that's impossible, but still you would bring it back though to day on what your market penetration is. So I think, and I would really echo what Ron said on the goals, on having a goal of 300 or whatever that is, and realistically probably 175 is what you can do in selling widgets. If you focus on 300, you're going to sell 225 or 250 normally instead of hitting that 140 or 150. It's just the way it works. You need that magnetic north. What you said at the beginning of your presentation on the example, and that was a beautiful example of JFK and what he said about the moon. We as individuals, and particularly in the United States, for whatever it is in America, our culture, if you have that magnetic goal, you can reach for it. So,
How many years would you say?
I would go with 36 months. The reason I would go for that is because it's been ingrained on me by Dick Alexander that 80% of the brain is developed in the first 36 months of a child. And to me, at my age, since it's my birthday today, that's almost like dog years. So 1 year is 7, 2 years is 14, and 3 is 21. So we need to get it on, So 36 months.
Thank you.
I'll take a flick. I've said this before. This is STEM. I want 100 new STEM Latina teachers in Oregon in 3 years. I also want 25 Native American and 60 African American, but I'll start out with the 100 new STEM Latinas, 3 years.
Anybody else? Yeah, Anna and then Nicole.
So, when we're doing this work, I want to take it back to some of the comments that we heard today and some of the things that we've talked about. So we've adopted the Common Core standards. That is ultimately what we are supposed to be looking for from every one of our students on the continuum, and we want them to reach those benchmarks. So that, to me, is the end game, right? So we talk about the measures in our compacts. Measures in our compacts come if we do the standards. We can't change the benchmark for the educators that are working with our students. We don't have the privilege of having our commodity come in at the same point in time, in the same place when we get a student that walks through the door. You heard the word differentiate. We have to differentiate for students along that continuum. So when you're talking about setting benchmarks, well, if I know my second grade class is this group of students, I could set my benchmark or my goal, my target where I want to get, but the next group of students might be very different. They might, if you look at who they are and what they come into our schools with. So it's really difficult, and I've struggled with this since we started about setting this trajectory and whether we're setting ourselves up for failure by saying 40, 40, 20. And I think some people have already told us we're failures because we're not on our way. But the ultimate goal for an educator, I don't care where you walk into my gym, where you're at, I'm going to take you on that continuum as far as I can. So if you can't make one free throw when you walk in, what can you do when you're done? And I think every educator is trying to do that. So I struggle with this setting the benchmarks of how many cars we're going to sell or what we're going to do. It is, if there's any educator who's not trying to move them on the continuum, then we have a problem. So when you ask me how many years, Peter, I struggle with what that looks like, because in the compacts I haven't seen us demonstrate any dedication to really looking at providing the support to help districts get there and for them to use it in their budgeting process. So I think I really appreciate all the work in this report. Is I think speaks to some of the issues that we've been hearing about. But I'm scared to set the aspirational goal for my colleagues, because when we do it, we're going to be told that we didn't get there and we're no good because we didn't get there. And so I'm really struggling with that.
So Nicole?
I mean, I typically don't like to agree with Dick with Mel, but I think 36 months is, in my experience, a really positive way to do planning. It's long enough where you feel like you have enough time to do some of the work to get it done, but it's kind of the ideal frame. And I think in my experience at the Native American Early College Academy, when we began, we had a less than a 30% four-year graduation rate for Native students, and after about 3 years is when we were really able to see our community come together and decide what we wanted for our children, and to develop a new culture in partnership with our teachers, and see a school that had a 98% poverty rate and a almost 100% minority student demographic, graduating students at well over 90%, and one of our goals was that every student would go on to some type of higher education, and in about 3 years we were able to see those goals come to fruition. In the years that we didn't make all of our goals, we still had an incredibly high outcome rate, and I share that story because I can name the pieces of data, but there's stories like that all over the state, and there's stories like that all over this country, and I think it's really about finding that sweet spot and empowering our school leaders to feel like they have the resources and tools and support to get there, and I know it can be done.
Thank you.
David?
Yeah, I'm leaning more towards 5 years. I'm thinking 3 years, shorter things. Certainly we want some benchmarks. I mean, you don't want to be waiting just till 5 years or something to get to your goal. You want some concrete benchmarks along the way. But I'm thinking, especially as we're trying to span sectors here, 5 years, that's like 1 year before kindergarten to third grade reading. That's elementary school to 8th grade. That's 9th grade to just after 1 year after high school, first year of college. It's also what 5 years to do a 4-year degree. I mean, especially if somebody is doing it part-time or they're working or something, to me that seems the natural. If you're really looking at a cohort and a student starting a certain portion of the path in education, it seems 5 years makes sense, with certainly some benchmarks in 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 4 years along the way.
Thank you.
You're the last person.
I like 3 years, maybe saying the same thing what Dave's saying, because he's kind of going formative and summative in a way. We can look at it that way too. I also look at the investment in the legislative sessions and how Oregon is financed. To me, 3 years is a more natural one. It puts urgency in the conversation, but it also gives a little reality. I think it's doable if adults will have the will.
Thank you very much for going through that exercise. Again, we will come back in a more formal way with Seth's assistance regarding rules changes. And when the actual language is in front of you, this is something that you'll see a proposed number, but you'll have an opportunity for comment again. I do want to make sure that I do not give you the impression that the goals that were picked for post-secondary were not based on research. It's just the research at K-12 is something I'm more familiar with, and I think there's a good reason to look at the post-secondary metrics, but the reason is not that there was no research into them, just that there's different things that have come up since they were originally put in that's calling us to do that. And we'll be following up with some more of this in future meetings. Thank you very much for your attention.
You're very impressive, outstanding work. I know, just a lot of sidebar comments with the board, very pleased about the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, we're just going to kind of wind down. I don't see any of these being big ticket items. Let's go ahead and go to number 6, where we do have a second reading and a final action. I will be calling for a motion. It's the adoption of the 40-40-20 policy statement. Nancy, Ben, can you just give us a quick flyby before we take action?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Mulvihill. This should be familiar to the board. You reviewed a really this version. At your March meeting, it was based on a paper that you saw back in January. You had presentations from me and from Ag Balasa and from CCWD around the proposed policy. So I'll just leave it at that and see whether there are any questions. Again, this is a proposal for a policy statement that you would adopt to provide direction to staff and other boards, including the Higher Education Coordinating Commission and the Oregon Workforce Investment Board, on some work to help clarify and further define 40-20-20.
Are there any questions of Ben?
Oh, many, but so this really looks like by September is when we're looking to notch this in. Is that?
I think there are a lot of implications of this that will be used by, for example, the HAC in the development of budget and strategic investment recommendations that come back to you. But the immediate, the policy statement speaks to some particular tasks that we would report back to you on related to kind of clarifying goals for our working age adult population, and they may be different than 40-40-20, as well as recommendations to you on the types of degree, further clarification of the types of certificates and other experiences that qualify for that middle 40, that sort of vaguely defined and understood middle 40.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Hannah.
So just the, for the, who it applies to, have we come around to, or are we still working on whether it's all Oregonians or those that start within the system? And then our students are special needs students. Do we have something to clarify that?
Yeah, so the intent of the policy statement that you may vote on today is to some extent create a little bit of a bifurcation in 40-40-20 to acknowledge that 40-40-20 under statute applies to all Oregonians. And that in your interpretation of that under this policy statement is to say that for today's young children, 40-40-20 is that sort of pipeline goal. It's our aspiration for the class of 2025. I think that's been sort of the conventional understanding of it. But when we think about all Oregonians or all working age Oregonians in 2025 or 2015, the goal should be more tailored to in particular, the workforce opportunities for working age adult Oregonians. And so we're working within a statutory construct that says 40-40-20 is all Oregonians by the year 2025. And I'm not addressing the second part of your question because the policy statement doesn't address it. I would interpret the law and this policy statement as including all students, including students with disabilities, other special needs students, as fully incorporated within these. It doesn't call that out directly.
Okay, so I'm still not, is it, if we're looking at making the right investments, there's a very different investment, I think, if it's all Oregonians versus the class of 2025 in that pipeline. So I'm trying to understand when we do this, Nancy, what do you see? Do you see this, where do you see that coming down? Do we need any other language, or do you believe this
No,
lays out what
I
we
think
can do?
we've tried to work through that with looking at the definition of the middle 40, so, I feel.
Well, I think that's what the age cohorts refers to is 40-40-20 would be a goal for the overall working age adult population, including the just out of high school 18 to 25-year-olds, although precise targets for this population should be refined. I think that's some of the criticism from the initial draft, so I think that is open enough language. I really like the fact that it's the overall working adult population, because we're seeing there's a lot of returning to school and nobody's just learning one career early on and then staying in that anymore. So
you feel like it
And it's so much of the mission
well,
of the community.
I think that language makes sense now, and it is on the HEC we've been revising it a lot too to get to this point.
I would agree Mr. Chair.
I'm comfortable with it.
Mr. Chair.
I
I think we've got several things we're talking about, and I think when we get to the strategic piece, there'll be some further breakdowns, and I think Hannah's question's appropriate. But I think for the overall piece, we're talking about the whole population, and I think that's the piece we want to nail down now. And then as we do the strategies, there will be separate strategies for special needs who have either a regular high school diploma or a modified high school diploma. And that'll be part of the consideration that we need to come back to, even as we talk about what kind of further investments.
Do you feel like the wording
I feel like, yeah.
Okay, we've got a recommendation from Chief Ed Officer with this. I'd like to see if there's a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Boy, I miss you hitting that gavel.
I know. It's really taken away my umph. We're gonna have to bill these guys for it. Okay, number 7, adoption of college and career readiness definition. I sure hope we're done with this. Or one word. So Hilda.
I can't do this in one word, but for the record, my name is Hilda Rosselli. I'm the College and Career Readiness Director for OEIB, and last month we engaged you all and helped you think about and review a definition for college and career readiness. I need to, and you also had a proposal that was brought forward from Chair Yvonne Curtis from the OEIB Subcommittee for Best Practices in Student Transitions, in which the subcommittee recommended the adoption of this definition. Following the OEIB meeting, I had a very engaged conversation with the Youth Development Council, and they made a very strong recommendation for adding one word to the definition. And if you'll look on the slide, you'll see that it is in red as an additional piece of information around the indicator, the second indicator for the list of learning strategies, thinking skills, and academic knowledge. The thinking behind that recommendation was they really wanted to make sure that we were helping focus our students around the tools needed to be able to be resourceful in finding all of those things like scholarship money and how to find the resources that I need in order to move forward with my goals. After learning of support from the College and Career Readiness Cross-Sector Planning Group that initially did the work on this definition, the OEIB Best Practices and Student Transition Subcommittee all voted unanimously to adopt this minor addition, and thus I think it's coming forward to you with a friendly amendment for full board approval. And I would hand it over to perhaps Chair Curtis, since...
Sorry. Thank you, was the appropriate.
Thank you. Even though that wasn't my
I thought your
voice.
voice had changed.
I don't have anything to add except to recommend that we go ahead and incorporate this recommendation to add this word resourcefulness to the definition.
Any comments, questions to either Yvonne or Hilda? I know our best practices supports the addition of one word. Do I have a motion for this?
So moved.
Second, and second?
Second.
Yvonne, it's been moved and second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Hilda. Appreciate your work on that.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll finish with some updates, subcommittee updates, best practices and student transitions. Dr. Curtis, here.
All right. Today we started with committee reports, and I just want to report that there's a lot of great work going on towards the 40-40-20 vision and on the early learning as well as higher ed and everything in between. So we continue to have reports each meeting, and it seems like a lot is going on. I won't call out anything specifically. Then we moved to a report on work going on at the community college level with assistance from the Regional Education Laboratory and Education Northwest. They're looking at the idea of who is the community college student, so a little bit related to the previous conversation about making sure that we're defining not just students that are graduating from high school and how that relates to the goal, but also looking at the mission more broadly of community colleges and how they describe that all of the students there. Their work is looking at identifying some measurable outcomes that would meet the multitude of students that are there and addressing the barriers there. So we look forward to, it looks like they have some recommendations as they've been working with teams internally. They are looking at presenting that information and calling other stakeholders to looking at that and giving them feedback and then planning next steps. So that looks like really exciting work. I have to say, especially from my lens at the school district level of trying to work through some of those barriers, mostly political barriers, to just solve some of the problems for our kids. And who later end up really just who end up adults who never got in for various reasons, so it still addresses the needs of our kids, they just sometimes are older. And then David Batista from ODE, the Office of Equity, addressed the request made by Stand for Children. I won't speak to all of them, but basically I think their request is overall better communication with parents about where their students are in terms of language levels, the progress that they are making, and what are the strategies, not only best practice strategies, but what's going on or could be going on for their students. And it looks like ODE is positioning themselves, specifically the Office of Equity, to work on that and to figure out ways to make sure school districts are getting that information out. And specifically looking through exemplar models and getting clear about that and communicating that. David also shared with us the Oregon ELL plan kind of one-year report on where they are. It's a progress report, and I just want us to pause for just a minute and celebrate. Because if you remember last year at this time, we were just putting the ELL plan together. It was after a few years of work in some regional work that became sort of more statewide work around recommendations about what to do with ELs. And we, at that time, knew we had David to anchor the plan to in ODE, but that was all we had. And today he had his whole department there. The department is called the Office of Equity, even though what they're really looking on is all the curriculum and instruction, things that need to be addressed. So I think this is a chance for us as OEIB to say we accomplished something, and that thing that we accomplished was a plan that we supported, went forward, is moving forward, and making progress on all of the 7 goals. So that was really exciting for me. And so I just encourage that you take a look at that plan. Did that go out? Probably not to OEIB boards, so.
It's on the, it'll be on the website for best practices.
Wasn't it an attachment with the announcements? I believe it was.
Great.
If it wasn't, we should get that out to you, and I guess we can determine if we want to have anything else come to the whole board. But I do think we should take time to recognize and celebrate our accomplishments and communicate about those. We spend the rest of our meeting today in smaller work groups around the multiple recommendations that have come to us. We've had great presentations all throughout the year around all the great work that's going on, specifically around the issues of student transitions and barriers that might be there and how we can eliminate that. So what we talked about today is we looked at the long list of those in each of the categories that we saw as part of our charge in our work, and we gave you a chart, color-coded chart that showed what that was. We looked at each of the recommendations in terms of were there barriers that needed to be eliminated, what policies might need to be addressed, are we talking about investments in any of those, and who do they get assigned to, so we can be explicit as to whose responsibility they would be. And then also looking at each one to say, where does OEIB need to, well, let me just say the best practice panel should bring to OEIB to say, we need to lend our political support to some of these. Sometimes it's about just calling it out. And in fact, in my small work group, we said on some of them, all that was really needed was for OEIB to ask for a report. And it's kind of what we did with the ELL plan. When we were working on it, we said, how do we know this is really going to go anywhere? Because we've worked on great things in the state, and not been sure about how they accomplished anything. And it does make a difference when we ask people to report to us. Even if we're not even exactly sure what that report would look like we didn't last year, but now there's a framework around it, and we had a report. We could look now at those objectives, see what we accomplished, and then start to set some goals for the following year. That's it. We didn't make any decisions today, but we will be voting on and making decisions about what recommendations we will bring to you over the next few months.
Thank you, Yvonne. Questions, comments for her? Vicki, you are up with agency reports with TSBC. Which is tab 7.
Good afternoon, everybody. For the record, Vicki Chamberlain, and like Hannah, I used to teach PE, and I once had a fourth period class of 55th graders and stood between them and lunch. So I feel like I'm a little bit there today. Want to just quickly start out with the great meeting and best quote I heard today from Nancy, which was, no one knows more about teaching than the people practicing, and I have the wonderful opportunity to serve a 17-member board that has 8 teachers, 4 administrators, 2 higher ed folks, 1 school board member, and 2 public members. So I am to my board like Nancy is to you, and get to be the message for their work, so that's what I'm doing today. And we have 3 main things the agency does. These folks are appointed by the governor and can only be there by virtue of practicing. So the second, they aren't working in their job, they aren't eligible for my board. And they set the standards for licensure. They also accredit the licensure programs, and we make regular visits. And they set the sanctions for misconduct against the license. So I want to look back because we had some things happening that have dominated the work the commission has done. Last August, the Secretary of State published an audit and 2 findings related directly to the work of my board. One of them was Oregon's public teaching colleges need to do more to strengthen student teaching, and they tasked us to work with you particularly for the Oregon University system, to ensure that public teaching colleges and school districts continue strengthening student teaching practices. I do want to point out here that the Secretary of State in that report only has the ability to make recommendations for public entities. And there are 14 private universities that the commission accredits to offer licensure programs and prepare half the teachers, but we all operate under the same policy. So what the commission has done, we had started 2 years ago with a work group to strengthen student teaching and work with school districts and higher ed on this as part of the Council for Accreditation of Educator Preparation Alliance work. And that's a big name to say that we meet with school district partners, higher ed partners to look at strengthening student teaching. But I can't miss the opportunity to give a lot of credit to the work that Chalkboard has done with Teach Oregon and what they are learning, and they're working with us and participating and sharing what those best practices are that we can pass on. The second thing that was pretty strongly worded was that stronger licensing requirements could provide greater assurances of teacher preparedness, and the Secretary of State recommended that the commission consider requiring an independent performance assessment of teacher candidates' performance prior to licensure to determine whether they're ready to teach or they're adequately prepared. So just at the last meeting, the commission adopted the Stanford Center for Assessment, Learning and Equity, called SCALE Performance Assessment, or otherwise known as the EdTPA, TPA for Teacher Performance Assessment. I put the website in there for SCALE, but I would urge you to Google EdTPA. There's some wonderful data out there, and we are the 6th state in the nation to join this work. Thank you, Nancy. I'm proud of the commission. Just very quickly, the commission adopted a 4-year rollout plan, and we have the good fortune of being able to access some of the strategic investment funds to help train faculty, to help prepare scorers, and also to get some early candidates through the process of being assessed so we can use that data to determine where we set the score. So this next year, starting this fall, we will spend that time encouraging higher ed folks to become scorers and training and running assessment conferences and encouraging early candidates to go out. The following academic year, we'll continue training and communicating, because we have to communicate with the school districts, the parents, and the kids that this is a new way that student teachers are going to be assessed in the classroom, because it involves a small video, which is what national board teachers, I was really glad that came up today, must do in order to become nationally board certified. But it's a very tiny video. It's just going to be on a bigger scale. And so we'll continue with that communication. 30% of candidates in our teacher prep programs must take the NTPA in the spring of 2016, so we have adequate data to set scores. The following year, all candidates will take it so that it will be non-consequential, meaning it won't affect their ability to get a license, but we will be able to have a large pool of data in order to do our final score setting. And then in spring of 2018, it'll be consequential, meaning a license won't be issued from someone prepared in Oregon who hasn't passed the assessment. So this is big work that we're involved in. We've been working very closely with the OEIB staff on this. I'm rolling along. These handsome devils are my grandsons, and so I couldn't resist to put a picture in there. The commission also set standards for English language learners, which aligns with Goal 7 of the OEIB, and we have our work cut out for us, because we need to know when we go in and we accredit universities, what's that going to look like, what are the faculty standards, what can we help school districts with. And to Nicole and Sam's points, this isn't a separate conversation. This isn't also embedded so you can't see it, but it is highly integrated and upfront with the work that we need to do. And there has to be concrete measures. So we're looking at other states. Connecticut requires their state, who does the work that we do, that in all classrooms where there's more than 20 bilingual students who speak one language, that the district must offer a dual language bilingual program for them. And they have astounding results actually on their achievement gap and performance. So there's some exciting best practices out there. So the other thing I wanted to point out to you is the commission was very aggressive about our equity standards. So for accreditation, we do have a standalone equity standard, and I once sent this out to you via email, but it's one of 6 standards, which includes how are they assessing candidates, what does their field experience look like, and what is going on in the world of cultural opportunity and being prepared to work in a diverse world. So we were looking at, do they have experiences with diverse faculty? Does the university have a plan for recruiting and hiring diverse faculty? Do they have are there enough multicultural candidates in the program for them to work with their colleagues? Are they being placed in settings, even if they aren't student teaching there, where they're getting experiences with a large diversity of kids? And so I will point out to you, oopsie, that we have started applying this standard, and we have yet to have a university meet it fully, which is great, because you don't want standards everyone can meet fully, and there's always something to work on. The commission also adopted a dual language immersion specialization, which grew a little bit out of the ELL work. But in other words, we want to encourage people to demonstrate their proficiency in another language, so that our dual language programs that have been running sort of ad hoc for a number of years have some stronger standards regarding that proficiency. And the best example I want to use is, even though I speak English, I shouldn't be teaching it. I am not a language arts teacher. I am not a language teacher. So merely because I speak Spanish might not necessarily mean that I would teach Spanish. I may teach in Spanish. So we're drawing distinctions that we think are very important in order to help our kids move along. So, oh, look at that. And next time, I will bring back what we're doing in licensure redesign because it is a massive project that we're very excited about.
It's exciting to see the alignment between TSBC and the OEIB goals. I've referred to those several times. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Comments?
I just want to also appreciate staying with it. This conversation started, I think it was 2009, maybe 2010, so some things do take a while, but look at the great work, especially when it involves so many people. I love the clarity around the dual language. We have some teachers participating in that, and getting clarity around what skills do teachers really need to have to teach dual language effectively is going to make all the difference in the world. So we've had dual language programs because we know that's the right model in terms of the research, but we've been doing everything wrong about identifying, we're just grabbing out there teachers that speak Spanish. We have no idea the level of Spanish, the level of English, how they go together and all of that. And more importantly, we haven't known how to support those teachers. In our district, when I started looking underneath, that model's been there for years and years and years. In our district, we found the teachers who were teaching the Spanish dual language portion of the program had the least amount of professional development, the least amount of support, no resources, and on and on and on and on because we didn't know what we were looking for. So I think this will be a great piece of work to do. And for staying the course, going through the one that I know there's still a lot of work to do around what are the practices that educators need to have to be prepared to teach our ELL students. Everybody needs to be involved in that work, and it's still unclear, but I think getting to a place where we as an entire state, across agencies and boards, are saying that is certainly important for us to get clear about that and be intentional about that work. And it wasn't an easy political thing to do, but thank you, both of you, for leading that.
Here, here.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 10 is public testimony, which we do not have anyone. So with that, I will adjourn. Oh, Hannah.
We finished the TEL survey on Monday, and we got just about 60% of those eligible to complete the survey. And I've already seen something that came out through the newspaper that said that we only got, and I'm really disappointed. I just want to say it publicly, that someone would put that out there, that we only got 60. It's the first time we've done it. I'm extremely proud of the work that we've done with Rob, his department, with the governor's office, with Nancy, with COSA, to really try and get feedback about the teaching and learning conditions. And I just want to thank everyone who helped us get that done and say that we should be proud of the work we're doing. And now the next step and the biggest step is to actually do something with that data to make a difference for our students.
And we discovered that there were some errors in the number of teachers that were reported in schools. We shared that with ODE. They got a message out. So I just want to say, yes, it was our first time around. I think we can do better next time because now we know as schools and districts to go in and check that and that we can adjust it. We didn't know we could do that until later on. So, for example, one school that has 8 teachers, it was reporting they had 17. So that's going to make a difference in, and I haven't been able to follow up with everybody to see how many people adjusted that. So I think that's a great return for the first time, given there's some things that we can adjust for next time.
So we were that close to adjournment, but now I'm going to add to it. It'd be great to have some follow-up on that. As soon as we know everything, because that is a major undertaking, and we need to use that data, as Hannah said. So let's plan on that in the future when it's time, Rob.
Keep in mind, some people are mad at Kentucky too.
Yeah, that's
You can be a winner.
because their coach is going to the Lakers. With that, we're adjourned.